Chapter 319. Xiao Anquan did not even have the chance to fight back. He was split in half by Li Daochong. The 7 Zhao gang members who came with Xiao Anquan immediately fled. "Since you're here, why are you running?" Li Daochong said casually. The 7 people scattered in different directions. Li Daochong disappeared on the spot. He was as fast as lightning. In 7 different directions, lights flashed at almost the same time. The 7 Zhao gang candidates were instantly killed. Li Daochong's points rose again. However, the points dropped by the 7 people were not as much as Xiao Anquan's, but it was still more than 500,000 points. Li Daochong's points increased from 950,000 to 2,400,000. Not long ago, in the hall, Qian Changhai and Yung Byung-ha were frowning. After Li Daochong played the role of a profiteer, he went silent again. He did not move for 6 days. He stayed in the basement and made talismans again. His ranking, which had risen to the top 100, fell again. He fell all the way to the top 900. Why is this kid always panting? Why is he still making talismans? There are more and more supply boxes. Hundreds of people are selling talismans, and elixirs. How can he sell them at high price? Yung Byung-ha was anxious for Li Daochong. Yung Byung-ha did not get a reply. He turned around and saw Qian Changhai talking and laughing with a beautiful teacher. The old thing was still holding her small waist with one hand. How could he still care about the ultimate test? He had long forgotten about it. "Senior, are you serious? Are you giving me a deep-sea luminous pearl?" The beautiful teacher asked sweetly. Her almond-shaped eyes kept throwing flirtatious glances at Qian Changhai. It's true. You look exactly the same as my late wife. Seeing you brings back memories of my youth. Not to mention the deep-sea luminous pearl. Even if you want that star, this old man will find a way to pluck it for you," Qian Changhai said lecherously. "Senior, you really know how to joke. How can a star be plucked?" The beautiful teacher had a look of disbelief. The veins on Yung Byung-ha's forehead bulged as he said in a deep voice, "Old man Qian, you've been a bachelor all your life. How'd you get a wife?" When the beautiful teacher heard this, the smile on her face instantly froze. She pushed away Qian Changhai and spat. "Damn old man, you're lying." He stood up and left. Qian Changhai panicked. Don't go. I don't want the deep-sea luminous pearl anymore." "Old pervert." The beautiful teacher didn't even turn her head as she scolded him and went to sit somewhere else. Qian Changhai turned around and glared at Yung Byung-ha with a gloomy face. Exasperated, he said, "Idiot, no one will think you're mute if you don't speak." Yung Byung-ha pretended that he didn't hear anything. He turned to look at the screen and muttered, "Old man, don't be blinded by lust. Your student has already dropped to the 900s, and you don't even care." Qian Changhai glanced at the screen and said, "That kid is very cunning. There's no need to worry. Young people have their own plans. Us old people shouldn't be anxious." Inside a small room, Tang Xian, who had always been calm, couldn't sit still at this moment. She was anxious. If Li Daochong couldn't get into the top 20, it would be very difficult for her to get a spot to enter North Star University for him. There would be no way for him to study on a temporary basis. "Young miss, this Li Daochong couldn't have gotten first place in the direct test by carrying a large number of spirit talismans, right? His strength is actually very average. Otherwise, why would he keep making spirit talismans and not hunt dark ghosts or steal the points of other candidates? He must be incapable," Xiao Wei said with a bored expression. After watching for half a day, this Li Daochong did nothing but make spirit talismans. There was nothing special about him at all. Xiao Wei almost fell asleep several times. "It shouldn't be." Tang Xian's tone became uncertain. A few days ago, Li Daochong's test results were very good. Logically speaking, his strength should be good. His foundation establishment cultivation shouldn't be too bad, but this kid's performance in the soul dream space was just barely satisfactory. "I think so." Xiao Wei curled her lips. Tang Xian didn't reply. After half a day, she was a bit sleepy. She glanced at Li Daochong on the screen, who had just walked out of the basement. Her beautiful eyes slowly closed as she rested for a while. Duan Yuhao unscrupulously yawned. Tears overflowed from the corners of his eyes. One of his hands unscrupulously grasped the plump buttocks of the female teacher sitting next to him. After a few hours, this had become his greatest pleasure. Young Master Duan, Wei Xing is so strong. She could even insta-kill the Ghost King. The beautiful teacher praised. There's nothing strange about it. Wei Xing's talent is astonishing. She was born with the rarest heavenly spirit veins, the heavenly spirit veins. It's a natural counter to dark ghosts. Ghosts are most afraid of spirit light and lightning. Not to mention the Ghost King. Even Soulcatcher ghosts might not be a match for Wei Xing. Moreover, this girl is the daughter of the Wei clan. That old bastard Wei Beitong treats her like a pearl in his palm. As long as there's something good, he'll give it to her. Young Master Duan, do you have anything good to give me? The beautiful teacher suddenly pressed her whole body against Duan Yuhao's body. I do, of course I do. Duan Yuhao smiled. What is it? Follow me back to the hotel. You'll naturally know. Bah, I'm not going. On the other side, a few observers whispered to each other. Should this Li Daochong be demoted a level? He doesn't seem to be anything special other than his ability to make spirit talismans. He also knows how to be opportunistic. Other than that, he doesn't seem to be very powerful. Otherwise, he wouldn't be hiding all the time. He doesn't seem to have any leadership skills. He hasn't even formed his own team after so long. I can't see his strategy at all. He seems to be wandering around aimlessly. Could there be a mistake in the direct exam? Could Qin Zhan have mistaken him for someone else? Whatever. Let's observe the others. Soon, Li Daochong's image on the screen was switched to the most inconspicuous corner. If one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to see it. Everyone's attention was focused on the seated candidates. Dugu Lai, Wei Xing, and Bai Wuya occupied the top 3 spots on the rankings without any suspense. Bai Wuya had the easiest time. He had got more than 5 million points without much effort. Although Wei Xing was the only female in the seated candidates, she was the most domineering one. She killed anyone who blocked her way. With her cultivation base at the pinnacle of Foundation establishment, she dominated the entire city. With a single dragon scale sword, she was unstoppable. Those so-called groups didn't even dare to provoke her. Last week, a group of more than 200 candidates had accidentally gotten into a conflict with Wei Xing. In the end, they were completely annihilated and disbanded. Only when Wei Xing made her move did they realize how stupid it was to provoke her. Dugu Lai became the nightmare of those masters. He didn't kill ghosts or other candidates. He would only challenge those who were in second gear. In order to make it easier for him to find people, he organized a search team of dozens of people and made a few flying shuttles with supplies. As long as he found the person, Dugu Lai would chase after the examinee until he had a fight with him. Because these candidates were powerful, they had a lot of points. They were all over 1 million points. As for the top 10 candidates, Dugu Lai put them aside for the time being. These fat fishes were his targets in the last 2 days. The recruitment teachers of the various famous schools were all attracted by the seated candidates. Everything was within their expectations. The dark horse hadn't appeared yet, and it didn't seem like it would appear soon. There were still 5 hours before the end of the exam, which meant that there were only 5 or 6 days left in the dream space. The 2 recruitment teachers of the Grand Pass Combat Academy and Spirit Talisman Academy were the most disappointed. Li Daochong, who they had thought highly of, hadn't done anything. His ranking had already dropped to less than 900. Teacher Xiong, we were wrong. Li Daochong was overestimated. Spirit Talisman Academy's Chong Jian regretfully said, "Let's wait and see. It's not over yet." Xiong and I felt that Li Daochong wasn't that useless. Let's not look at him. I still have a dozen candidates to recruit. I'll go to another room. With that, Chong Jian picked up his spiritual computer and walked out of the room. He went to another room to look at the other candidates. The spirit vision screen in the main hall was used to observe the entire exam space, but because there were too many of them, it was rather messy. The small rooms could be selected based on the candidates they wanted to recruit. The spirit vision screens in the 10 small rooms showed the 300 or so popular candidates in the exam. Not long after Li Daochong's screen was switched, about 10 minutes later, an observer let out a soft cry of surprise. Li Daocheng's ranking has changed. The voice wasn't loud, but it was loud enough to alarm everyone in the quiet room. Tang Xian, who had been resting with her eyes closed, suddenly opened them and immediately looked at the rankings next to the spirit vision screen. The first thing she looked at was the 900 or so positions below. Tang Xian quickly found Li Daocheng's name, but Li Daocheng's name was slowly climbing up. At that moment, it was already in the 800th position, and it was getting faster and faster. In an instant, it passed the 500th position, and it didn't slow down at all. Is there a problem with the system? Xiao Wei also saw this scene and said in disbelief. Quickly switched to Li Daocheng's screen. Tang Xian was shocked. Xiao Wei picked up the spiritual controller and pressed a few buttons. Soon, Li Daocheng's screen appeared in an eye-catching position again. The moment the screen appeared, Li Daocheng turned into a shadow and instantly killed 7 candidates. His ranking soared again. It didn't stop until it reached the 220th position. The points behind his name were fixed at 4 million. Personality, too much of a personality. He doesn't make a sound, but when he does, he shocks the world, Duan Yuhao praised. Li Daocheng's sudden rise in the ranking attracted the attention of the people in the hall outside. This kid finally made a move. Young Byungha's heart finally settled down. Chapter 320. After Li Daocheng killed Xiao Anshuan and the others, he headed straight for the Ghost King's spawn point. After the boss Dark Ghost was respawned, it would not attack the examinees. Only when the examinees attacked, it would the boss Dark Ghost's attack mode activate. The weakened Ghost King was naturally no match for Li Daocheng. Song ink flashed with spiritual sun lightning. Li Daocheng killed the Ghost King with just 3 slashes. Wei Guang and the other 2 stared blankly at Li Daocheng, who had just sheathed his saber, in disbelief. Every time they hunted a malicious Ghost King, they had to dispatch a team of at least 20 people. Moreover, they had to pay the price of around 10 casualties to kill one. Li Daocheng had only used 3 slashes. Freak! The same thought flashed through the minds of Wei Guang and the others. After Li Daocheng obtained Xiao Anshuan's points, the 100,000 point from the Ghost King seemed insignificant. It was not satisfying at all. Student Li, why don't you join our righteous gang? We can help you collect points. All you need to do is protect us. If a strong opponent appears and you defeat them, we'll give you a portion of our points. There are more than 700 people in the righteous gang, and everyone will give you an average of 2,000 points a day. You can easily get one. For 1,000,000 points, Wei Guang tried to rope him in. You guys should keep it. I've investigated the last 10 exams. This way of obtaining points, when everyone's position is revealed in the last few days, you'll be ganged up on. When that time comes, the safe zone will be revoked. No matter how strong you are, it'll be very difficult for you to face thousands of candidates. Forget about it, Li Daocheng said with a smile. Is that so? What a pity. Wei Guang did not agree with Li Daocheng's idea. Hurry up and leave. Someone's coming. Li Daocheng stared at the northeast, the corners of his mouth rising. Xiao Yinzhao had arrived. Wei Guang and the others' telekinesis senses were not as strong as Li Daocheng's, so they naturally could not sense anyone approaching. They only knew that a large number of examinees from the Righteous Gang were rushing over. The fastest few were the leaders of the Righteous Gang. Not long after, a graceful figure flashed over and was the first to arrive. Yi Feiyue was the closest. She was the first to rush over after receiving Wei Guang's location. Upon seeing Yi Feiyue, Wei Guang's heart slightly skipped a beat. From the first time he saw this female student from Blue Bay Star, Wei Guang was completely captivated by her quick-witted eyes. Feiyue, you've come. Let me introduce you. This is Li Daocheng. He doesn't belong to any group. Just now, Xiao Anshuan's group was insta-killed by him. Wei Guang excitedly ran forward and said. Yi Feiyue, however, acted as if she didn't see him. She looked at Li Daocheng with a faint smile on her face. Li Daocheng also looked at Yi Feiyue with a smile and waved his hand. You finally appeared. Yi Feiyue passed by Wei Guang and walked towards Li Daocheng. What do you mean by finally appeared? When did I disappear? Haven't I always been here? Li Daocheng shrugged. What do you mean by here? You can see us on the scoreboard. So why didn't you come looking for us? Do you think that us old friends are too weak and will drag you down? Yi Feiyue said unhappily. Ha ha, I'm afraid they'll drag you down. Li Daochong laughed. What are you saying? Being overly modest is just being pretentious. Yi Feiyue rolled her eyes at Li Daochong with a look of disdain. Wei Guang and the other two were stunned as they looked at Yi Feiyue and Li Daochong's seamless conversation. The two were obviously old acquaintances and the kind that was very familiar with each other. Yi Feiyue was one of the few female examinees in the Righteous Gang who specialized in actual combat. Her cultivation was at the late stage of qi condensation, and her combat strength was formidable. She was the goddess in the hearts of many male examinees in the Righteous Gang. It was an honor to be able to talk to her. Yi Feiyue, on the other hand, was a woman of few words. Aside from those she was familiar with, she rarely spoke. Seeing Li Daochong, this cold and aloof girl, take the initiative and even swear, Wei Guang and the other two were momentarily unable to react. Yi Feiyue's behavior was a bit different from her usual self. Hong Ying whispered, "Goddess, you wouldn't like this guy, right? Look at her face. It's a bit red, and her eyes are a bit strange. It seems like she's a bit embarrassed." Chen Hai nodded and said, "A bit. Don't tell me Li Daochong is the Xiaochong that Yi Feiyue and the Blue Bay Star people often talk about." Wei Guang suddenly realized that his introduction was very silly. They already knew each other. At this moment, it seemed that they were a match made in heaven. Perhaps they were a couple? At this moment, several figures flashed over. Orson, Akin, Lu Ming, and Gu Chao arrived one after another. When they saw Li Daochong, other than being surprised, they were delighted. This guy was the winner of the Blue Bay Star Tournament. Although it was disqualified, in their hearts, the first place was Li Daochong. When old classmates met, there was no lack of small talk. Almost all the people from the Blue Bay Star were present. Of course, there were two who weren't present. One was Zhang Honglai. A dead person naturally wouldn't appear. The other was Zhao Wujin. Li Daochong hadn't forgotten about this guy. At that time, Zhao Wujin had said that he would teach Li Daochong a lesson in the final assessment. Luo Dehai was the last to arrive. His huge body landed on the ground like a cannonball. Li Daochong, you've become stronger again. Just how did you cultivate? Luo Dehai had been beaten up badly by Li Daochong. Until now, he still couldn't forget it. Now that he saw Li Daochong, he felt that he was much stronger than before. His confidence took a hit. Zhao Wujin isn't with you? Li Daochong asked casually. Zhao Wujin? Don't mention it. That guy is a traitor. He's now the lackey of the Zhao Gang's Shao family. Orson said disdainfully. Li Daochong wasn't surprised. Instead, he felt that it was normal. Zhao Wujin wanted to deal with him. Joining the Shao family was the best choice. Traitor? Orson, this is an exam. You can do whatever you want. What's your relationship with me? If I don't go with you, I'm a traitor? Even if you want to slander me, this isn't how you do it. Speak of the devil. Zhao Wujin's cold voice came from behind them. Fine, you're not a traitor. You're hero, Zhao. Okay. Orson shrugged. I don't need you to judge who I am. You don't have the qualifications. Talk if you can beat me, Zhao Wujin said in a deep voice. Let's fight. I'm not afraid of you. Orson rolled up his sleeves and was about to fight. Hee, don't be in such a hurry. I'll let you fight to your heart's content today. Just don't be a coward when the time comes. Zhao Wujin laughed sinisterly. A storm was brewing in the South District. Candidates from both the Zhao Gang and the Righteous Gang gathered in the same street. However, the Zhao Gang was clearly premeditated. All the candidates who came were experts. None of them were below the mid-stage of the Qi gathering. The four heavenly kings of the Shao family were all present. After Shao Anquan revived in the safe zone, he immediately rushed over and gathered more than 300 people. When the Righteous Gang received the news from Wei Guang, they only thought that a boss-level dark ghost had been discovered and that there would be a small conflict with the Zhao Gang. Hence, only about 100 candidates from nearby came. Whether it was in terms of numbers or quality, the Righteous Gang was at an absolute disadvantage. Xiao Yanjiao looked around and laughed. Student from the Righteous Gang, I found the person I'm looking for today. I'm in a good mood and don't want to fight with you. If you want to leave, go ahead. If you don't cry later. You know that I don't like to kill. I like to imprison you. If I capture you, you'll be at the bottom of the rankings for this assessment. Haha. Many candidates from the righteous gang revealed timid expressions. They were not afraid of being killed. At worst, they could just revive and start all over again. However, if they were imprisoned, it would not be fun. Xiao Yanjiao would directly snatch all their points and completely reset their points. Then, he would imprison them in an area. Right now, there were at least 100 candidates who were unable to leave. Xiao Anshuan was a spirit array master. This declining profession played a huge role in the final assessment. You guys take the other students and leave first. Li Daochong turned his head and glanced at Orson and the others. Little Chong, you're slapping us in the face. Are we so disloyal? Do you know why we're called the righteous gang? What we pay attention to is the word righteousness, Lama Orson said. Don't be silly. It's not easy for you to participate in the joint examination of 100 schools. Don't lose points because of me. If you don't get a good ranking, it will greatly affect your future, Li Daochong advised. Little Chong, if we leave you behind, what's the use even if we get a high ranking? Forgive me, Lu Ming, for not being able to betray my friends for glory, Lu Ming said resolutely. That's right. The taciturn Gu Chao spat out a word. He gathered a ball of spirit energy in his hand, ready to fight at any time. Little Chong, you haven't sold me the talisman yet. How can I leave empty-handed? Yi Fei spread out her hands. Hearing the words of his blue Bay Star companions, Li Daochong was inexplicably moved. Speaking of which, he did not have much interaction with them. Half of their friendship had been forged through fighting. Clap, clap, clap. Xiao Yanjiao clapped and smiled. Since you're all good brothers and so loyal, then don't leave. Xiao Yanjiao's face darkened, and he waved his hand. Go. Don't leave a single one alive. Clear their points and throw them into the maze. The points belong to whoever catches them. This young master doesn't want a single point. With this order, the restless examinees of the Zhao clan all surged forward. Looking down from the sky, the scene of more than 300 people charging forward was quite spectacular. On the other side, the group of less than 100 people immediately appeared much friendlier. The first battle of the ultimate assessment thus broke out. Each examinee displayed their remarkable abilities. Foundation establishment cultivators flew into the sky with flying swords dancing in the air. Chi condensation cultivators fought on the ground with sabers and swords flashing. Talismans flew in all directions as explosions rang out one after another. Many magic treasures of all shapes and sizes were released, radiating brilliance in all directions. Outside the Soul Dream space, on a space shuttle hovering in the air, the true observers of the 4 ring star zone's 100 schools joint examination were staring at the battle for points that had broken out due to personal grudges. An old man in a robe looked at the scene and stroked his beard, his eyes shining. These kids from a Shao family aren't bad. They organized their members and assembled high-quality manpower. In just 1 hour, they completed all the operations and launched an attack, catching their opponents off guard. They're good candidates for commander-in-chief. Another old man shook his head. The manpower is ready-made and has already been assembled beforehand. They can't be considered commander-in-chief talents, but the target has already been determined. Those kids on the other side just happen to be that kid's friends. A free combination of factors led to a shortage of manpower. However, they didn't give up on their companions. Even though they're at an absolute disadvantage, they're fearless. This kind of mentality is worthy of praise. These kids should be trained well. The 2 old men had different opinions. As they spoke, the others standing behind them did not interrupt, nor did they dare to. Chapter 3:21. One of them was Lan Tong, the director of the 4th Ring Starfield's Education Department, and the other was the 4th Ring Starfield's governor, Hua Yangzhenren. Both of them were mid-stage Yuanian cultivators. They were the real organizers of the 4th Ring Starfield's joint examination. However, They were only there to observe the younger generation and wouldn't interfere with the recruitment of the various universities. They would leave once the examination ended. However, every word from these two core leaders of the Fourth Ring Starfield carried a lot of weight. Even if it was just a casual conversation, it would still be remembered by those who paid attention. Inside the Soul Dream space, the battle between the Righteous Gang and the Zhao Gang was in full swing. Due to the intensity of the battle and its scale, the news quickly spread. Not long after, there were several hundred examinees who came to watch the competition. Wei Xing stood on the dragon scale, sword in the air as she looked down coldly. Her beautiful eyes pierced through the crowd and landed on Li Daocheng. On another building, Du Gulai stood on the edge of the roof and looked down as well. However, he wasn't looking at Li Daocheng, but Xiao Yanqing. Among the hundreds of candidates below, only Xiao Yanqing was worthy of Du Gulai's attention. He didn't care about the others at all. Bai Wuye sat on top of a low building not far away, playing with a pair of steel balls as he watched the battle. The three heroes of Blue Parasol were all present, causing the other candidates who came to watch the battle to avoid them, not daring to get too close. They were afraid that they would be insta-killed if they weren't careful. They wouldn't even know what happened when they respawned in the safe zone. Brother Dugu, the Righteous Gang, is done for today. Those fat sheep with a lot of points are going to lose a lot of weight, Bai Wuye suddenly said. In fact, Bai Wuye was very far from Du Gulai, at least a few hundred meters away, but he didn't speak loudly. However, Du Gulai could hear him clearly, as if he was right in front of him. Wei Xing was the same in the air. However, Du Gulai didn't say anything, as if he didn't hear anything. He only looked at Xiao Yanqing as if there was no one else around. After a while, Du Gulai muttered to himself, "Xiao Yanqing, let me see your strength. Don't disappoint me." Wei Xing's beautiful face was expressionless, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. After not seeing Li Daocheng for several months, she was looking forward to seeing how strong he was. Li Daocheng stood in the middle of the street, but no one dared to approach him. In the beginning, there were a few blind candidates who attacked Li Daocheng, but they fell before they could even get close. Psychic attacks were always so convenient. This caused fear to well up in the hearts of the other examinees. In addition, the pressure emitted by Li Daocheng was that of a foundation establishment cultivator. Thus, no one dared to make a move against Li Daocheng. On the other side, of the four heavenly kings of the Shao family, 3 stood in front and 1 stood behind. This one was naturally Xiao Anquan. After experiencing Li Daocheng's Song Ink Saber, Xiao Anquan still had lingering fears. Moreover, he was not a battle-type cultivator and was not good at fighting, so he naturally hid far away. The other 3, Xiao Yanqing, Xiao Yanzhao, and Xiao Feng, faced off against Li Daocheng. The distance between them was less than 10 meters. The reason why they had not made a move yet was because both sides were waiting for an opportunity. Li Daocheng was looking for a breakthrough. After all, there were 3 opponents. One was in the middle stage of foundation establishment, one was in the early stage of foundation establishment, and the weakest was at the peak of qi condensation. Li Daocheng did not dare to be careless. Once he made a move, he could not allow any mistakes. Otherwise, it was very likely that he would fall into their trap. Xiao Yanqing and Xiao Yanzhao had not made a move yet because they were waiting for Xiao to activate the Spirit Sealing Formation. Once the Spirit Sealing Formation was activated, the outside world would not be able to see what was happening in this area for a period of time. At that time, Xiao Yanqing could release the Soulless Ghost and instantly take over Li Daocheng's soul. The Spirit Sealing Formation was the strongest formation that Xiao Anquan could create. This formation had no offensive or defensive properties, and it would not create illusions. The Spirit Sealing Formation only had one use, which was to seal off the central system of the spiritual brain, making it unable to recognize the spiritual order in the spiritual simulation world for a period of time. Li Daocheng saw that the opponents were still not making a move. He smelled a hint of a conspiracy, and his gaze became even more vigilant. "Are you guys coming one by one, or together?" Li Daocheng opened his mouth and asked. "Together? Li Daocheng, you think too highly of yourself." Xiao Yinzhao sneered. Not together? Then one by one, who's first? Li Daochong asked indifferently. His eyes were fixed on Xiao Anshuan in the distance. This guy was constantly gesturing something, and from time to time he would release something. Just as Li Daochong finished speaking, Xiao Anshuan's mouth moved a few times, but no sound could be heard. Then Xiao Yinzhao gave a sinister smile and hurriedly retreated. Xiao Feng faced Li Daochong and chopped down with his sword. The one who made a move was actually the weakest. Li Daochong was a bit surprised, but he did not dare to be careless. Song Ying swept out and chopped down. Broken stones split the earth. Clang! A crisp sound exploded, and Xiao Feng was sent flying. The difference in strength between the two sides was obvious. Li Daochong did not move at all. Li Daochong was just about to chase after him, when suddenly a gust of wind broke out beside him. Xiao Yanqing appeared like a ghost. He cursed in his heart. Xiao family dog, I knew you guys wouldn't come one by one. Li Daochong did not panic, and a talisman in his hand whistled out. Boom! It hit Xiao Yanqing head-on. The power of a level 8 talisman might not be able to kill a Foundation Establishment cultivator, but it was not impossible to injure him. The moment Li Daochong shot out the talisman, he caught a glimpse of a black shadow passing by. It was so fast that he did not see it clearly. There was a violent explosion. Xiao Yanqing was also sent flying. He fell to the ground with his arms crossed, and black smoke rose from his arms. Li Daochong's pupils shrank. Good guy, he actually used his arms as a shield to block the head-on impact of a level 8 talisman. More importantly, not only did he block it, but he also seemed to be fine. Xiao Yanqing's body was much stronger than expected. On the roof of the building, Ghoul Lai's eyes narrowed as he praised, good body, to be able to take a direct hit from a rank 8 fire talisman without any injuries. Xiao Yanqing, you did not disappoint me. Wei Ziying frowned slightly. She also saw the black shadow, but it was too fast for her to see clearly. Xiao Yanqing's sneak attack did not succeed, and he was repelled by the talisman. Although he showed extraordinary physical strength, he seemed to be at a disadvantage in terms of battle techniques. Xiao Yanqing is too careless. Who would sneak attack like that? Isn't this giving the opponent a chance to react? Bai Wuye shook his head. I think it's intentional. Ghoul Lai's voice sounded. Intentional. Bai Wuye touched his chin. Is there a conspiracy? After Xiao Yanqing landed, he put his hands behind his back and looked like he would not attack again. He looked at Li Daochong like he was looking at a dead man. Xiao Yinzhao was even more unrestrained. He saw the soul catcher ghost invading Li Daochong's body. Xiao Yinzhao smiled sinisterly. Li Daochong, bye-bye. He waved at Li Daochong. Li Daochong did not know what was going on, but his body shook as a powerful dead soul energy invaded his mind. This dead soul energy was so violent that Li Daochong could not react in time. It had already entered the depths of his mind. Beep! Soul catcher, ghost's remnant soul detected. Just as Li Daochong was startled, thinking that he had been hit by some sinister poison, the hot-blooded upgrader beeped. At that moment, Li Daochong understood Xiao Yanqing's intention. So that's why. The Xiao family bastard actually had a soul catcher ghost's remnant soul and brought it into the spiritual dream space. Taking such a big risk just to deal with me? It's really hard on you. Li Daochong's lips curled up. If it was some other dirty trick, he might have fallen for it. However, he wanted to use the nether ghost's remnant soul to possess him. This kind of dirty trick was useless against him. Li Daochong's expression was calm. The spirit energy in his body gathered in his mind. His spiritual thoughts gathered together and blasted at the soul catcher ghost's violent remnant soul. The hot blood level-up device automatically activated its devouring mode. Even the soul catcher ghost's violent remnant soul could not resist. In a short while, the violent remnant soul completely melted in the blue light of the hot blood level-up device. Beep! Soul catcher ghost's remnant soul killed. Soul power gained. Host leveled up to level 17. Boom! Spirit energy surged out of Li Daochong's mind. The spirit-based placenta absorbed the spirit energy crazily, and a small bump condensed in the center. That was the embryonic form of Jindan. Li Daochong officially stepped into the mid-stage of Foundation establishment. Li Daochong was secretly delighted. Xiaoyan Zhao, that bastard, probably never dreamed that not only would the Soul Catcher Ghost's remnant soul not be able to possess him, but would also become a delicious meal. If it was a real Soul Catcher Ghost, Li Daochong would not be able to defeat it even at the early stage of Foundation establishment. However, it was different with a remnant soul. However, if it was a head-on confrontation, Li Daochong might not be a match for the remnant soul. However, if it wanted to invade his body, seize his soul, and possess him, that would be a great gift. Li Daochong's mental power was strong, his soul was stable, and he had the hot blood level up device. Now, only the Soul Catcher Ghost King could pose a threat to Li Daochong's body if it invaded Li Daochong's body. Anyone below this level would be courting death if they invaded Li Daochong's body. Even if it was just a remnant soul of a Soul Catcher Ghost, its soul power was very strong. After the transformation, the spirit energy in Li Daochong's body increased rapidly. It only stopped when it reached the mid-stage of Foundation establishment. This was a great bargain. Xiaoyan Zhao observed the changes in Li Daochong. A few minutes had passed, but this guy was still standing in the same place without moving. There were no signs of him going crazy at all. Logically speaking, after the remnant soul of a Soul Catcher Ghost invaded, it would take less than a minute at most to devour the soul of an early-stage Foundation establishment cultivator and possess him. Why was there still no movement after 4 or 5 minutes? Xiaoyan Zhao asked curiously. Yanqing, are you sure that the remnant soul has entered Li Daochong's spiritual sea? Xiao Yanqing loosened his hands behind his back. He also did not understand what was going on. I'm sure. The remnant soul has definitely entered Li Daochong's body. Then why hasn't he gone crazy yet? Go and take a look. Xiaoyan Zhao was worried. Xiao Yanqing hesitated for a moment, but still walked toward Li Daochong. However, there was a hint of fear in his eyes. This was because after being possessed by the remnant soul of a Soul Catcher Ghost, Li Daochong's strength would increase tremendously. He would at least reach the late stage of Foundation establishment. No matter how conceited Xiao Yanqing was, he knew that he was no match for a Soul Catcher Ghost, even if it was just a remnant soul. Xiao Yanqing carefully walked to Li Daochong and waved his hand in front of the latter's eyes. There was no reaction. He pushed again, but there was still no reaction. Was he dead? Xiao Yanqing pushed again, but there was still no reaction. Could it be that the remnant soul has been sealed for too long and its soul power is insufficient, so it died together with Li Daochong? Xiaoyan Zhao took a few steps closer and asked after taking a few glances. Xiao Yanqing had no idea what was going on. He simply took out a dagger and stabbed it toward Li Daochong's head. Suddenly, Li Daochong's eyes opened abruptly. His face was ferocious as he roared, "Ah!" Chapter 322. Xiaoyan Zhao was in an even better state. He staggered backward and fell on his butt. Ghost! He turned around and crawled like a toad, but before he could crawl far, something tightened around his ankle. Something was stepping on it. Xiaoyan Zhao turned around and saw a foot stepping on his ankle. Looking up from his foot, he saw Li Daochong looking at him with a grin. Xiaoyan Zhao was terrified. He extended his hand, and a spirit energy magnetic resonance saber appeared in his hand. He swung it madly. Li Daochong was even faster. He threw a punch. Xiaoyan Zhao's head flew everywhere like a watermelon. His brain juice splattered everywhere, and he disappeared. He returned to the safe zone. It was only then that Xiao Yanqing registered what had happened. 3 flying swords flew out from behind him at the same time. The 3 flying swords were Xiao Yanqing's personal enchanted treasures. They were grayish-silver in color, and they were low-grade heaven-tier enchanted treasures. Xiao Yanqing's cultivation techniques were the Xiao family's high-grade, Earth-class cultivation techniques, Silver Snake Sword Art and Diamond Body. These 2 martial arts were domineering martial arts. Silver Snake Sword technique was about craftiness, while Vajra Body was about ferocity. If he practiced these 2 martial arts at the same time, there would be strength in craftiness and ferocity. It would be impossible to guard against them. Before Xiao Yanqing turned 16, he slept in medicinal liquid. His body was much tougher than a normal person's. Xiao Yanqing was one of the seated examinees in the joint examination of 100 schools. He was ranked 6th, but those who knew him believed that his ranking was a little low. Aside from the 3 heroes of Blue Parasol sect, Xiao Yanqing should have no opponents. Xiao Yanqing shouted, "Silver Snake, emerge!" 3 flying swords shot at him like lightning. The shadows of silver snakes could be seen in the light. Li Daochong held Song ink in his hand. Spirit energy surged out of his body, and wisps of spirit sun lightning flowed out. It was the 4th stage of 9 splits saber technique, heaven-breaking slash. The saber glare was real, and with a loud bang, it cut horizontally. Clang! The 3 flying swords were sent flying. "What?" Xiao Yanqing cried out. The flying sword technique he was proud of was broken, just like that. Xiao Yanqing focused his mind, and the 3 flying swords that were sent flying flew back to Li Daochong. It was the 8th stage of 9 splits saber technique, airborne slash. Li Daochong pointed with 2 fingers, and Song ink shot out. Song ink was like a rainbow. The blade carried a burst of spirit sun lightning, spinning and chopping down. Zong! With a flash of light, the 3 flying swords were all cut in half. Xiao Yanqing was dumbfounded. Then he gritted his teeth. Damn it, he shot out like a cannonball. Xiao Yanqing's greatest reliance was not the 3 flying swords, but his invincible Vajra body. The body of Vajra had 3 stages. Every level would transform when it was mastered. The first level was the Wolf Guardian Deity. The second level was the Tiger Guardian Deity. The third level was the Bear Guardian Deity. When Xiao Yanqing jumped up, a giant wolf appeared behind him. The muscles on his body swelled, and his hands turned into sharp claws. Thick bristles grew on his palms. Transformation divine ability? Li Daochong was surprised. Strictly speaking, the cultivation method that Xiao Yanqing was using had already exceeded the scope of cultivation methods. It was a kind of magical technique. In the early stages, self-cultivators were still fighting with their bodies and fists, a bit like martial artists. However, as they progressed, they would leave the category of martial artists. Magical techniques were the true trump cards of self-cultivators. Of course, fists and weapons could still be trained to the extreme to compete with magical techniques. Li Daochong's eyes flashed with excitement. He originally wanted to retract Song ink, but instead, he retracted his hand and turned it into a fist. In the air, Wei Ziying's expression changed. Idiot, he's using magical techniques. Aren't you just asking for trouble by fighting with your fists? Not only was Wei Ziying not optimistic, but Dugalai also laughed disdainfully. Xiao Yanqing lost in terms of magical treasures and weapons. That kid saber was not bad, close to a mystical spiritual treasure. However, if it was a physical fight, that kid would most likely be beaten into a pig's head by Xiao Yanqing. Bai Wuye's face was full of regret. I thought it would be exciting. I didn't expect it to end so soon. Xiao Yanqing, can't you wait a bit before using Diamond Body? At least fight a bit more. Yi Feiyue, who was less than 10 meters away from Li Daochong, saw this scene and cried out, Daochong, you can't. Xiao Yanqing's body has been refined. You can't fight him head-on. Unfortunately, this shout was too late. Li Daochong raised his hand and punched out, colliding with Xiao Yanqing's claw-like hairy fist. Bang! A deafening sound. It was like a giant hammer hitting the ground. Xiao Yanqing retreated 3 steps. Li Daochong retreated 3 steps. They were evenly matched. Wei Ziying's beautiful eyes slightly widened. That beautiful but cold face of hers revealed a surprised expression. Evenly matched? Li Daochong's body was this strong? This kid definitely didn't have this ability on the flying ghost shuttle 2 months ago. How could he improve so quickly in just 2 months? Wei Ziying herself was a monstrous existence, but even so, she was still frightened by Li Daochong. Wei Ziying's age was about the same as Li Daochong's, but her cultivation resources were not something an ordinary person could compare to. Her talent was also heaven-defying. Wei Xing was now at the peak of foundation establishment. In less than 3 years, she would step into the Jindan realm. This kind of cultivation talent and speed was unimaginable to ordinary people. It would be good if 1 out of a trillion people could achieve this. But at this moment, Wei Xing found a guy who was even more monstrous than her. Although she hated this guy, she had to admit that he was really powerful. Seems like Grandpa wanted to see you. Let me see where your limit is. Wei Xing's eyes showed a bit more interest and less coldness. If people who knew Wei Xing knew what she was thinking at this moment, they would definitely be shocked. They might even think that Wei Xing was sick and had a fever. This girl who stood at the peak of the 4-ring starfield had always looked down on everyone. Growing up, there was no boy who could interest her. Li Daochong was the first. Du Galai was even more surprised. The Xiao family's diamond body was a little famous in the Federation. Back then, the Xiao family's ancestor used this cultivation method to defeat a 15-level ghost beast, which was equivalent to a Wu ghost. Back then, the Xiao family's ancestor was only at the early Yuanying realm. In terms of strength, it was impossible for him to defeat a 15-level ghost beast. From this, it could be seen that the diamond body was not something normal cultivation methods could compare to. After mastering the diamond body, normal Dharma treasures and weapons would not be able to cut through it. Bai Wuya, do you know who that kid is? Why haven't I seen him before? Du Galai turned his gaze to Li Daochong for the first time. Before this, he had not even looked at Li Daochong. Bai Wuya played with the steel ball in his hand and glanced at Du Galai, who was standing on the roof a few hundred meters away. His eyes were filled with disdain. Aside from cultivation, Du Galai was an idiot in all other aspects. He did not even know who was fighting. His name is Li Daochong, from a 4th-tier cultivation planet. He got first place in the direct test this year. His usual weapon is a Tsang ink-colored long blade. He is at the early foundation establishment realm and knows how to make spirit talismans. He should be a spirit sequence master. After coming to Kangwu planet for the test, he bumped into the young master of the Xiao family, Xiao Yinzhao, in the Xuanfang courtyard on the first day. The two of them got into a conflict and started a feud. Xiao Yinzhao surrounded Li Daochong today because he had suffered a loss in the conflict that day and wanted to get back at Li Daochong. Bai Wuya explained everything that Li Daochong could see. Du Galai finally understood Li Daochong and nodded. First place in the direct test. No wonder. Interesting. Wei Xing naturally heard the conversation between the two. Her beautiful eyes inadvertently glanced at Bai Wuya. Just from how he casually mentioned Li Daochong's information, she knew that this guy was not simple. Compared to Du Galai, he seemed to be more difficult to deal with. The 3 heroes of Kangwu planet were shocked by Li Daochong. Yi Feiyue was even more shocked when she saw it up close. Xiao Yanqing had faced 3 early-stage Foundation Establishment Realm candidates from the Righteous Gang and was defeated in a few moves. Yi Feiyue had seen it with her own eyes and knew very well how powerful Xiao Yanqing was. Yi Feiyue knew that Li Daochong was also very powerful, but that was on a grade 4 cultivation planet after all. It was different now. His opponent's level was much higher, and they were all well-known figures in the 4th ring starfield. However, the kid who sold the spirit talismans made Yi Feiyue wrong again. Not only did he cut down Xiao Yanqing's artifact weapon with a single slash, he was also not at a disadvantage in a direct punch. When the 2 fists collided, the resulting shockwave sent more than 20 candidates flying. 2 of them were directly killed and returned to the safe zone. A trace of disbelief flashed in Xiao Yanqing's eyes. Among the cultivators at the same level as him, there was no one who could take his fist head-on while he was executing the diamond body. But this seemingly thin and weak kid did it, and it seemed like he did not even use his full strength. Bah! Xiao Yanqing spat out a mouthful of saliva. The muscles on his body swelled up a little, and the thick hair on his body began to turn yellow. The word king was faintly discernible on his forehead. The second layer of the diamond body, tiger diamond. With every layer, the strength would increase by 1-fold. Ferocious tiger fist. Xiao Yanqing's body grew bigger again. His original height of 180 centimeters had grown to more than 230 centimeters. Standing in front of Li Daochong, he looked like a small mountain. He was almost as tall as the barbarian tribe of Luo Hai. Even though his body was covered by a layer of thick hair, his huge muscles were clearly visible. His entire body looked like an iron tower. The corner of Li Daochong's mouth curled up as he whispered to himself. Basic cultivation technique, heavy cannon fist. Xiao Yanqing's fist was aimed at Li Daochong's face. The latter swung his fist to defend himself. He wanted to exchange blows with Xiao Yanqing. Bang! An even heavier and muffled sound rang out. Bang! The shockwave rolled and exploded. With their fists as the center, the shockwave spread out to a radius of more than 100 meters. The buildings on the side of the street were shaken to the point that they cracked. The two houses closest to them directly collapsed. With the lesson from before, there was no one around the two of them this time. The fighting candidates consciously distanced themselves. Xiao Yanqing hurriedly retreated 7 steps, while Li Daochong retreated 5 steps. This time, Li Daochong actually gained the upper hand. After this exchange of blows, Xiao Yanqing, who was full of confidence, lost a lot of his arrogance. He looked at Li Daochong with a hint of fear in his eyes. I'll let you have 2 punches. This time, it's my turn to attack, Li Daochong said as he licked his lips. Let? Xiao Yanqing was instantly shocked and angry. Let? You're bluffing me. 3rd stage of Diamond Body, Bear Diamond, Giant Bear Fist. With a roar, he charged forward once again. The thick hair on Xiao Yanqing's body turned from yellow to black. His body grew larger, and he looked like a savage beast. Li Daochong didn't seem to use much strength, but he had already shot forward. He muttered, basic cultivation technique, wave tossing fist. His fists were like waves, overlapping one another. Basic cultivation technique didn't have any fancy names. It didn't have many techniques, and it didn't even have any moves. Every step and punch was simple and unadorned, but it was simple and practical. Bang! The 2 fists collided. This time, the muffled sound was very short, and there was no shockwave. Chapter 323. The points on Li Daochong's belt kept rolling and increasing rapidly. Li Daochong's punch actually sent Xiao Yanqing, who was in his strongest form, straight to the safe zone. After killing Xiao Yanzhao and Xiao Yanqing, Li Daochong's points increased tremendously. These 2 fellows were rich in points. Before being killed by Li Daochong, Xiao Yanzhao was ranked 7th on the scoreboard and had more than 9 million points. Xiao Yanqing was ranked 9th on the scoreboard and had more than 8 million points. After being killed, his points were halved. Li Daochong's original 5 million points increased by 9. 3 million. He broke through the 10 million mark and reached 87 million points. Li Daochong's name on the scoreboard shot up to the top 10 like a rocket. In the hall in the small room, there was an uproar. All the recruitment teachers and observers saw the battle between Li Daochong and Xiao Yanqing. Only 3 punches were used. The early stage foundation establishment, Li Daochong, killed the mid-stage foundation establishment, Xiao Yanqing. It was not rare to win against someone of a higher level. Many geniuses could defeat ordinary cultivators who were 1 or 2 levels higher than them. But Xiao Yanqing was not an ordinary cultivator. He was the number 1 expert of Planet Kangwu's Xiao family and one of the top 10 seeded candidates in this year's 100 schools joint examination. Xiao Yanqing had been on the watch list of the Big Four since a long time ago. Xiao Yanqing's talent was above average, but he cultivated diligently. He was basically a masochistic cultivator. His highest evaluation was his willpower. At the same level, the number of people on planet Kangwu who could defeat Xiao Yanqing was less than 1 slap. Only the 3 heroes of Kangwu could do it. But because of their talent, the 3 heroes of Kangwu had already reached the late stage and peak stage of foundation establishment. They were no longer on the same level as Xiao Yanqing. So theoretically, there were only 2 people who could defeat Xiao Yanqing. One was Gu Kuan, and the other was Zhongji Dao. But these 2 fellows came from the 3rd ring star zone, which was 1 level higher than the 4th ring star zone. The recruitment teachers and observers of the various universities were very clear about Xiao Yanqing's strength. How powerful were Li Daochong's 3 punches? Just how strong was this guy? The college admissions teachers who had been disappointed in Li Daochong and had even given up on Li Daochong were now writing Li Daochong's name back on the list. The teachers who didn't pay attention to Li Daochong directly put Li Daochong's name in the first batch of students to be recruited, together with Wei Xing, Du Guli by Wu Ye, Zhong Jidao, and Gu Kuan. Xiao Wei was flabbergasted as she looked at Li Daochong, who was currently ranked 6th on the scoreboard. At this moment, the little girl's displeasure towards Li Daochong had already been extinguished by her astonishment. When Li Daochong defeated Xiao Yanqing, Xiao Wei was very clear that this guy was really powerful, and his future achievements would not be low. Miss, I misjudged you. You have a good eye. Li Daochong's talent is probably enough to look down on the 4th ring star zone. Xiao Wei couldn't help but admit. Tang Xian was currently staring at the screen in a daze, her red phoenix eyes filled with astonishment. She had thought highly of Li Daochong. However, she had never thought that Li Daochong would be able to enter the top 10 of the scoreboard, much less defeat a seeded contestant. However, Li Daochong had actually defeated Xiao Yanqing, the Xiao family's #1 expert of the younger generation, as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. The 5 people ranked above Li Daochong were the 5 strongest in this joint examination. When Li Daochong sent Xiao Yanqing flying with a single punch, Xiong Yanai suddenly stood up from her seat. She was completely unaware of her own actions and was only looking at the youth who had unleashed that powerful punch on the screen. Li Daochong, the Grand Pass Combat Academy is your home. You are too suited for the Combat Academy, and no other academy is more suitable for you. Xiong Ni's eyes were filled with passion, as if she had found a treasure in the depths of the mountains. Chang Jian of the Spirit Talisman Academy had also returned. When he saw Xiong Ni, he had an apologetic look on his face. He had just said that he wanted to remove Li Daochong from the observation list, but the latter had already rushed up to 6th place. He had been slapped in the face, but he still had to thicken his skin and continue observing. Everyone had been convinced by Li Daochong's heaven-defying performance, but they only switched back to Li Daochong's spirit sequence when Li Daochong's points changed. This was after Li Daochong had killed Xiao Yanjiao. Before that, there had been a few minutes when the image had disappeared. Aside from the 2 elders on the flying space shuttle, no one else had noticed. What the hell are those brats from the Xiao family doing? They used a spirit sealing array to make the spirit brain lose its memory for 5 minutes. Lan Tong frowned. Assistant Su, is it against the rules to use a spirit sealing array? Huayang asked with a serious expression. Assistant Su was none other than Su Yuliang, who was bent on messing with Li Daochong. However, Su Yuliang was currently in an extremely bad mood and was somewhat absent-minded. Li Daochong's growth was too fast. Su Yuliang suddenly realized that he could no longer move the foolish youth that he had thought he could kill with a casual sentence. If Li Daochong's ranking continued to be at the bottom, then he would definitely become the focus of the Federation's training. His status would be completely different. Not to mention, Qin Zhan favored this kid. With the military backing, it would be difficult to touch Li Daochong. Assistant Su, Assistant Su. Su Yuliang was in a daze and absent-minded. He only came back to his senses when he heard several calls. I'm here. Su Yuliang hurriedly replied. What are you thinking about? Senior Huayang asked you. Is it against the rules to use a spirit sealing array in the dream space? An official from the Ministry of Education glared at Su Yuliang. Su Yuliang thought for a moment and said, Senior, it is not against the rules. The rules of the joint examination did not state that it is not allowed to use a spirit sealing array. Huayang Zhenren nodded slightly, looking a little disappointed. The old man was a little annoyed that he had used a spirit sealing array and could not see the scene for a few minutes. Since it is not against the rules, then there is nothing to say. However, I'm a little curious about what happened in those few minutes. Is there a way to restore it? Huayang Zhenren asked casually. If someone else had said that casually, no one would have gotten involved. Most likely, it would have been left unsettled. It was only a few minutes. What could have happened? However, the person who spoke was Yuan Ying's great cultivator, Huayang Zhenren, the regent of the 4-ring star region. Even if he wanted to fart, he had to be careful. Immediately, the Ministry of Education official ordered people to find the relevant personnel to restore the missing spirit sequence. After Li Daochong killed Xiao Yanzhao and Xiao Yanqing, the two bosses of Zhao Gang were KO'd. More than 300 people were instantly leaderless. Orson and the others were country bumpkins who could not fight back. Some of the Zhao Gang members began to retreat. In a short while, not a single person was left. The Righteous Gang's 100 people withstood the attacks of more than 300 people and suffered more than 30 casualties. The other side also suffered more than 30 casualties. However, with the two bosses killed, the Zhao Gang's losses were naturally much greater. After the battle ended, Orson and the others gathered around and looked at Li Daochong as if they were looking at a monster. "Little Chong, you are too abnormal," Orson exclaimed. "You don't use your saber, and now you use your fists?" Lu Ming had a face full of envy. "Even the talisman is useless. Are you going to sell it to me?" Yi Feiyue smiled. Seeing them chatter, Li Daochong felt a warm current flow in his heart. None of them left. "Yes, I'm going to sell it to you. Do you want it?" Li Daochong smiled. "Yes, what grade talisman is it?" Yi Feiyue asked. "Grade 8, Li Daochong replied. Yi Feiyue stuck out her tongue. "Then it must be very expensive." Li Daochong nodded. "It is very expensive. Do you want to buy it?" Yi Feiyue gritted her teeth. "Buy it? How much?" Li Daochong stretched out a finger and looked at Yi Feiyue with a smile. The latter looked at Li Daochong's finger and was a little angry. 10 million per talisman? Li Daochong shook his finger. Yi Feiyue angrily pouted. "Damn, Li Daochong, you're picking on people you know. Don't tell me it's 100 million per talisman?" Orson, Lu Ming, and the others also looked at Li Daochong in confusion. There's a bit of disdain in their eyes, as if to say, "Stinking brat, we were so loyal just now. You are cheating us now. How stingy." "One hug, 10 talismans." Li Daochong finally opened his mouth and said. When the angry Yi Feiyue heard this, she looked at Li Daochong in astonishment. Her heart warmed, and a trace of redness appeared on her small face. "Hug one, hug one." Lu Ming immediately cheered from the side. The others reacted and shouted in unison. "Hug one, hug one." Yi Feiyue turned to glare at Lu Ming and spat, "Scram." However, before Yi Feiyue could turn around, a pair of arms wrapped around her and her small face leaned against a warm shoulder. "Thank you," a soft voice whispered in Yi Feiyue's ears. Yi Feiyue's small face blushed. Only then did she react. "Thank your head." In less than 2 to 3 seconds, Li Daochong released his arms and looked at the others. "You guys, I won't hug you." Lu Ming made a vomiting gesture. Please don't hug me. I will vomit the whole night." "Huh?" Li Daochong laughed heartily. He then took out the level 8 talismans he made before. He took out 5 talismans of each category and handed them to Yi Feiyue. 5 fire talismans, 5 ice talismans, and 5 thunder talismans. A total of 15 talismans. "Here you go." Yi Feiyue received the 15 level 8 talismans excitedly. There were only 5 to 6 days left until the end of the exam. With these talismans, she would have a great guarantee whether it was protecting herself or killing other candidates. Chapter 324. Yi Feiyue's completely subconscious action instantly caused everyone to quiet down. Orson, Lu Ming, Ao, Kachuan, Gu Chao, Luo Dahai, Duan Yao, and Li Daochong all looked at Yi Feiyue in astonishment. Yi Feiyue glared at them. "What are you looking at? Have you never seen a beauty before?" Lu Ming whistled. "That's right. I've never seen one before." Yi Feiyue made a hitting gesture. "If you keep looking, I'll hit you." Lu Ming pretended to be scared. "I'm so scared." "Ha-ha." The others roared with laughter. At this moment, the group of Blue Bay Star students were chatting and laughing together, forming a sharp contrast with Zhao Wujin, who was licking his wounds alone in a dark corner. This senior from Xiansong University was incomparably lonely at this moment. Half a year ago, he was still Blue Bay Star's most dazzling star. Stars revolved around the moon, and his future was limitless. Everyone believed that he would definitely shine in this time's joint examination of 100 schools. After all, Zhao Wujin had participated in the joint examination of 100 schools before, and he had become the biggest dark horse and rushed into the top 10. However, in just half a year, Zhao Wujin's halo had completely disappeared. Even though he came to Kangwu Star early, not a single university's admissions teacher came to recruit him. Zhao Wujin began to recall everything that had happened in the past half a year. He realized that ever since Li Daochong accidentally killed Zhao Tansheng, his bad luck had begun. Recently, Zhao Wujin's cultivation progress had been extremely slow and even stagnant. He was stuck at the peak of qi gathering without any progress. He couldn't break through to foundation establishment, which was so close at hand. His state of mind seemed to have become chaotic. At first, Zhao Wujin blamed everything on Li Daochong. But when the final assessment began, Zhao Wujin realized that there was a world of difference between this year's joint examination of 100 schools and the previous one. The guy who ranked first in the previous year was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. There were only 3 foundation establishment candidates in the top 10, and there weren't even many who were at the peak of qi gathering. Zhao Wujin had been at the middle stage of qi gathering back then and made it into the top 10. Although there was a certain amount of luck involved, it was enough to show that Zhao Wujin's strength was very strong in the previous batch. In this year's batch, Zhao Wujin discovered to his horror that the number of examinees who had entered the foundation establishment stage had increased explosively. There were actually as many as 20 to 30 people. What was even more ridiculous was that 3 of them had reached the peak of the foundation establishment stage. What the hell was this? Zhao Wujin felt like he was in another world. How could there be such a huge gap between the 2 years of the joint examination of 100 schools? Being at the pinnacle of the qi gathering in this year's batch was just bullshit. Any random examinee could be at the pinnacle of the qi gathering. In addition, Zhao Wujin also discovered that the junior brothers and sisters of Blue Bay Star had entered rocket mode in the next few months. Gu Chao and Ao Kechuan had successfully built their foundation with the help of spiritual herbs and the strong support of the Department of Education. Zhao Wujin felt like he had been abandoned by the world. "Brother Zhao, do you want to get rid of Li Daochong?" Xiao Yinzhao's voice suddenly came from behind Zhao Wujin. Zhao Wujin was startled. He hadn't expected Xiao Yinzhao to return from the safe zone so quickly. "He killed my younger brother and injured my grandfather. I want to chop him up every second." Zhao Wujin gritted his teeth. "Unfortunately, you can't beat him." Xiao Yinzhao shook his head. These words were like a basin of cold water that drenched Zhao Wujin from head to toe, chilling him to the core. "Do you want to become stronger?" Xiao Yinzhao asked. "Who doesn't?" Zhao Wujin asked back. "That's right. Who doesn't want to?" "Brother Zhao, you're quite talented. The reason you're stuck at the peak of the qi gathering is because you lack cultivation resources. Brother Zhao, you should know the situation of our Xiao family. I can provide you with enough cultivation resources to make you stronger. How about it?" Xiao Yinzhao continued. Zhao Wujin was stunned for a moment. He paused for a moment before saying, "What do you want?" Xiao Yinzhao smiled sinisterly. "It's easy to talk to smart people. There's no free lunch in this world. Since Brother Zhao is a smart person, I'll be frank. I understand that Li Daochong has a younger sister and a servant girl on Blue Bay Star. He also has a crippled father, right?" Zhao Wujin nodded. "That's right. This isn't a secret." Xiao Yinzhao continued. "After the joint examination, I'll give you 2 mid-stage foundation establishment Xiao family loyalists. You can return to Blue Bay Star and kill Li Daochong's servant girl and crippled father. Then, kidnap his younger sister and bring her to Kangwu Star for me. In the future, my Xiao family will take care of all of your Zhao family's business. I guarantee that your Zhao family will become the most powerful family on Blue Bay Star. How about it?" This, Zhao Wujin's heart skipped a beat. He didn't expect Xiao Yinzhao to be so cruel, wanting to kill immediately. Were all the people on high-ranking cultivation planets this crazy? Not many people on Blue Bay Star would dare to have such thoughts. "Are you unwilling, Brother Zhao? If you're unwilling, then forget it. I won't force you. Just pretend I didn't say anything. Your Zhao family situation isn't very good right now, Xiao Yinzhao said as he turned around to leave. Wait a minute, Zhao Wujin blurted out. Xiao Yinzhao paused and turned around. You change your mind? Zhao Wujin said with some difficulty. If you want to kill that servant girl and crippled father, I'm afraid that 2 mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivators won't be enough. Not enough? How can that be? Your Blue Bay Star's mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivators are already very powerful, right? 2 of them won't be enough to kill the old, weak, sick, and crippled, Xiao Yinzhao said with a look of disbelief. Li Daocheng's old house on Blue Bay Star is heavily guarded and has a very powerful spirit array. There are also people protecting it. It's said that his father isn't crippled to the point where he can't move at all. After all, he was a Jindan cultivator back then. Even if he's seriously injured now, if he really goes all out, even a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator might not be able to withstand it, Zhao Wujin explained. That's true. Then I'll give you 3, no more. Xiao Yinzhao nodded. Okay. Zhao Wujin's eyes were cold as he nodded. A murderous aura was emitted from his body. Li Daocheng, you killed my brother and beat my grandfather half to death. I killed your servant girl and your father. So we're even. When a person is in a desperate situation, it's easy to go crazy. Xiao Yinzhao patted Zhao Wujin's shoulder with satisfaction. Then it settled. In the spiritual dream space, we can't do anything to that brat Li Daocheng. We can only talk about it when we get out. Zhao Wujin's body suddenly trembled. Young Master Xiao, this is the spiritual dream space's city of ghosts. Won't our conversation just now be recorded by the spiritual brain? Xiao Yinzhao laughed fearlessly. Brother Zhao, do you think I'm that stupid? Don't worry, no one will hear a single word I'm saying to you. Zhao Wujin subconsciously said, Spirit Sealing Array? Xiao Yinzhao shook his head. Do you know about Dark Psychic Masters? Zhao Wujin sucked in a breath and nodded. Dark Psychic Masters will invade. This part of us will no longer exist. Unfortunately, the Dark Psychic Master I found has limited abilities and can only do so much. Otherwise, I wouldn't have needed that brat Xiao Anshuan. Forget it. Let's not talk about it. Xiao Yinzhao realized that he had said too much and immediately stopped. Dark Psychic Masters, in simple terms, were equivalent to hackers in our world. Li Daocheng's battle with Xiao Yanqing made him famous in the City of Ghosts. None of the examinees dared to find trouble with him. Just like that, 3 days passed. The final exam entered its countdown. At the same time, all of the examinees' positions were revealed. The final exam's final point battle had begun. Not only would the examinees be able to enter the 4 famous schools with a good ranking, but they would also receive generous rewards. The final 3 days of battle entered its climax. The seated examinees finally began to get serious. The number of points they had was extremely large. Every time they died, they would lose a large amount of points. Even if the seated examinees' strength was heaven-defying, there would still be many examinees who would risk their lives to attack them. The battles between the seated examinees had also begun. Dugalai's first target was Yi Renjian from the North District. Dugalai had always been curious about the Yi family's black tortoise bloodline. Bai Wuye found Pu Guantian. Originally, Bai Wuye had no interest in killing other people. However, Pu Guantian's points had risen too quickly these days. His ranking had surpassed Bai Wuye's, so he had no choice but to fight with Pu Guantian. Otherwise, Bai Wuye would have to stay outside of the top 3. At the same time, at the foot of the 1,000 Ghost Mountain outside the City of Ghosts, Wei Ziying stared at Li Daocheng, who had just arrived. Chapter 325. The battle between the seeded candidates was magnificent and was clearly much more intense than the other candidates. Dugalai and Yi Renjian had practically razed 2 blocks to the ground. The battle between Bai Wuye and Pu Guangtian seemed gentle, but it was actually more destructive. The 2 of them fought in the sky and on the ground. The buildings in a straight line of more than 30 kilometers were riddled with holes. If one looked at them from a distance, they wouldn't notice anything different. However, if one got closer, they would be shocked. Each building had hundreds of holes and dozens of slash marks. Several buildings had been directly split in half, with a gap as thick as a finger in the middle. A battle between late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators was already beyond the comprehension of ordinary people. However, the battle between Wei Xing and Li Daochong, which attracted the most attention, had yet to begin. Li Daochong had come at the invitation, thinking that he would have a fierce battle with Wei Xing. But when he arrived, Wei Xing had no intention of fighting him. Ultimate boss? Li Daochong looked doubtful. That's right, the ultimate boss. If you can kill it, you'll get 20 million points. Wei Xing nodded. Li Daochong actually knew nothing about the ultimate boss, and he hadn't heard anyone mention it either. Li Daochong had investigated the previous ultimate examinations of the 100 schools, but he had never seen any ultimate boss. Why haven't I heard of such a thing? Li Daochong didn't believe it. It's normal that you haven't heard of it. In the past, the probability of an ultimate boss appearing is only 1%. The last time it appeared was 200 years ago, Wei Xing said calmly. 1% chance? Why is it that the more I listen, the more I don't understand? Li Daochong frowned slightly. Before coming to Kangwu Planet, Li Daochong had chatted with Qian Changhai once. After all, the latter was a veteran educator who had experienced the 100 schools joint examination at least 30 or 40 times. Qian Changhai had never mentioned an ultimate boss. Li Daochong had a big question mark in his heart. Right now, we are in the spiritual dream space. In fact, it is the spiritual virtual world created by the spiritual brain. Everything is set according to the spiritual order. The difficulty of the final test can be adjusted. However, this adjustment is not man-made. It is also a preset spirit order. The stronger the examinees that enter the spiritual dream space are, the harder it will be. When all the examinees exceed a certain limit, the spiritual brain will activate the final boss spirit order. Wei Xing explained patiently. Li Daochong understood a little and asked again, so, the strength of our batch has exceeded the critical point? Wei Xing gazed into the distance, seemingly deep in thought. After a while, she replied, it has exceeded the limit by a lot, even more than the time 200 years ago. Li Daochong suddenly thought of something, and his pupils abruptly contracted. In the last 10 years of the joint examination of 100 schools, the first-place winners had all been at the early stage of the Foundation establishment stage. In 2 years, they had been even better, directly winning first place at the peak of the Qi condensation stage. Compared to the previous years, this year's competition was simply a group of perverts. The examinees who had won first place in the previous years might not even be able to make it into the top 20 this year. Li Daochong quickly thought of Zhao Wujin. 2 years ago, this fellow had been at the middle stage of the Qi condensation stage and had made it into the top 10. At the time, he had seemed very powerful, but now, it was hard to even make it into the top 200. It was normal for there to be fluctuations in the strength of the examinees in each batch, but the fluctuation this time was a little too big and didn't make sense. Li Daochong rubbed his chin and asked, Owner Wei, how do you know? The most recent time was 200 years ago. Even 20 years ago, Owner Wei shouldn't have been born yet, right? Wei Xing withdrew her beautiful eyes from the distance and turned to look at Li Daochong. There wasn't much fluctuation in her gaze. My grandfather was a seed examinee in that batch's joint examination of 100 schools. A trace of surprise appeared in Li Daochong's eyes. So Wei Beitong had also taken part in the joint examination of 100 schools. In that case, it wasn't strange for Wei Xing to know. It was just that, Li Daochong continued to ask, why didn't the officials reveal this information at all? Wei Xing smiled. Reveal it? Why would they reveal it? Responding to unexpected events is also a kind of assessment. Li Daochong nodded. That's true. But Owner Wei, don't you find it strange that our batch is so strong? Hearing Li Daochong's question, Wei Xing's beautiful eyes revealed a hint of admiration. This seemingly obvious and simple question would often be overlooked by others, or perhaps not even noticed at all. Whenever a large number of talents suddenly appear at a certain time, It means that something has happened to the spirit energy in the star domain we live in. The environment has changed, and the cultivators naturally change with it. However, this isn't a good sign, Wei Ziying answered. An increase in spirit energy is a good thing. Why isn't it a good sign? Li Daochong asked, but in his heart, he could vaguely guess the reason. The consecutive strange events on planet Crimson Sun and the appearance of the undying soul coffin weren't coincidences. It didn't take a genius to figure out that Wei Ziying knew so much because Wei Beitong had told her. The benefits of having a powerful elder were self-evident. The universe we live in should be called Spirit Realm. This world is filled with all kinds of spirit energy, such as spirit energy, spirit stones, spirit veins, spirit trees, spirit herbs, and so on. This world is filled with spirit energy, and it is not inanimate. It can sense danger, and when it senses danger, it will rise up and fight back, just like us humans. Since ancient times, our ancestors would take up weapons to protect themselves when facing fierce beasts. That's probably the reason why we started cultivating. When the spirit fields in Spirit Realm sense the pressure in a certain place increasing, the spirit energy in Spirit Realm will be directed there to resist the pressure. My grandfather called this change the spirit field effect. Spirit Realm doesn't want to be devoured, and the only thing that can pressure Spirit Realm is the Hades underworld. My grandfather predicted that the Hades will launch another large-scale invasion in a dozen or so years, and our generation will become the main force to resist the Hades. At the same time, we will also benefit from the increase in spirit energy in the spirit fields. Wei Ziying's expression became serious after she finished speaking. Li Daochong's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement, and he subconsciously licked his lips. When that day came, wouldn't he, Li Daochong, be able to eat to his heart's content? All right, it's still a bit early to talk about this. The Hades won't make any moves in the short term because their demon master is still asleep. Student Li, if you and I work together, no one here will be our match. The final boss will definitely be ours. How about we split the 20 million points? Wei Ziying changed the topic. Li Daochong smiled. You're trying to rope me in because you're worried that those fellows will team up to deal with you, right? Wei Ziying calmly looked at Li Daochong. Student Li, aren't you afraid that they'll team up to deal with you? You killed Xiao Yanqing in 3 punches, and those fellows have already listed you as one of their main competitors. When the spiritual dream realm tells you that killing the final boss will give you 20 million points, do you think they'll just leave you be? Who wouldn't want to top 3 prizes in the final exam? Who wouldn't want to enter the cultivation halls of the 4 great schools? Who wouldn't want to be the top scorer in the 100 schools joint examination? Identity, status, honor, and wealth. Any one of these is enough to make people go crazy, not to mention all of them at the same time. Li Daochong laughed mischievously. Apart from the prizes, everything else didn't mean much to him. He didn't rely on the cultivation halls to cultivate. Top scorer? Forget it. He didn't want to be the center of attention. That way, he wouldn't have any freedom, and how would he be able to devour dark ghosts to cultivate? All right, I'll team up with you, but I have a condition. What condition? Wei Ziying's brows furrowed in displeasure, as if she was being coerced. You can take the points, but I don't want a single one. After this, I need your Wei clan to provide me with some materials for free, Li Daochong replied. Just that. Wei Ziying's furrowed brows relaxed in disbelief. Did this brat not know how to calculate? If she took all the points, wouldn't that be the same as sending her to first place? Moreover, Li Daochong might not even be able to enter the top 5. That's right, just that. However, Owner Wei, don't think that it's easy. The materials I want might be difficult to obtain, Li Daochong continued. Student Li, don't you know what my grandfather does? If you want materials, you've come to the right place. If that's your only condition, not only will I agree, but I'll also give you an extra 100,000 spirit stones as compensation, Wei Ziying said straightforwardly. Deal. Li Daochong smiled. Chapter 326. When Wei Ziying talked to Li Daochong, she used a sound barrier talisman, a talisman that interfered with spirit order. The outside world could only see the two of them but not hear anything. Even their images were blurry. Wei Ziying was Wei Beitong's granddaughter, so it wasn't strange that she could interfere with the spirit brain system. However, many people were very interested in the conversation between Wei Ziying and Li Daochong. Unfortunately, even when they found professionals to analyze the spirit order, they couldn't find anything. It was as if this audio didn't exist. In the next 4 days, Li Daochong went around looking for boss-level dark ghosts to kill. Although it wasn't much, it was better than nothing. Li Daochong didn't want to be first, but he still wanted to keep his place in the top 10. First, he wanted to get the prize. Second, he wanted to have the initiative in choosing a cultivation university after the exam. Because the top 10 had more than 10 million points, it was impossible for the other candidates to catch up. Unless they could defeat one of the top 10, this was an impossible task for most candidates. The difference in strength was too great. A small number of strong candidates might have a chance, and they did give it their all. Unfortunately, in the face of such a huge gap, any method was useless. Until the last day, the top 10 didn't change at all, and the other rankings didn't change much either. When the countdown started, the city of 10,000 ghosts quieted down. Most of the candidates had no choice but to accept their current rankings. But at that moment, more than 40,000 candidates received a message at the same time. It was a notification from the spirit brain system. In an hour, the final boss will spawn in the central square of the city of 10,000 ghosts, a level 10 ghost beast, the Balrog crocodile. Anyone who kills it will get 20 million points and an invincible effect. Ghost beasts were divided into 3 levels. Level 1 to level 3 was equivalent to the Qi refinement stage. Level 4 to level 6 was the Qi condensation stage. Level 7 to level 9 was the foundation establishment stage. And level 10 was equivalent to early Gene Dan cultivators. However, the ghosts spawned in the city of 10,000 ghosts were slightly weaker than those in the real world. As soon as this message came out, the 40,000 candidates in the city of 10,000 ghosts were in an uproar. What did 20 million points mean? Wei Ziying, who was in first place, only had 18 million points. In other words, whoever killed the Balrog crocodile, even if they were ranked last, would instantly become the champion of the final assessment. Moreover, the invincibility effect meant that no one would be able to kill you. Everywhere was a safe zone, and your points would be retained until the end of the assessment. Of course, this was only in theory. In reality, the number of candidates who had the ability to fight against the Balrog crocodile among the 40,000 candidates could be counted with 2 hands. The other examinees did not even have the ability to get close to the flaming demon crocodile. The Balrog crocodile was like a giant crocodile that walked upright. It was more than 4 meters tall, and its body was covered in a layer of black scales. It was covered in Hades' death flame lava. It was immune to most physical attacks, and only attacks with spiritual energy were effective against it. They would even spit out hellfire from their mouths. If anyone below the Foundation Establishment realm were to come into contact with the hellfire, they would instantly be burned to ashes by the hellfire. This type of ghost beast was the most commonly seen ghost beast on the frontline battlefield. It was a powerful ground tank when Hades launched a large-scale attack. Not long after the notification was sent out, the top 20 examinees quickly approached the central plaza of the city of 10,000 ghosts. Some of the other examinees, hoping to get lucky, also followed them. They walked together, wanted to see if they could pick up any scraps. But what the examinees didn't expect was that, although the Balrog crocodile hadn't spawned yet, the area within 10 kilometers of the central plaza was already filled with an aura of death and hellfire ghosts. 15 Ghost King had spawned at the same time in different directions. Moreover, this time, the Ghost King no longer mechanically crouched in place, but took the initiative to attack. As soon as it found a target, it would immediately pounce on it and tear it to pieces. 20 minutes after the notification that the final boss had spawned, another notification was sent out. If the Balrog crocodile isn't killed before the end of the assessment, all the rewards for this joint examination of 100 schools will be canceled, and everyone's score will be lowered by 1 level. The top 10 examinees on the scoreboard will be punished. They will be sent to work in the mines for 2 months during the summer break, and the rest of the examinees will work in the mines of their own cultivation planets for 1 month. As soon as this message was sent out, the examinees wailed, especially those who hadn't planned on joining in the fun at all. Wasn't this a F***king joke? Why did they bring us along? What does it have to do with us? Is the teacher who came up with the questions so irritated that he's taking it out on us? Are we going to die with them? Complaints came from all over the city of 1,000 ghosts. More than 40,000 examinees were cursing, but the rules had already been set. They had no choice but to pray that those guys could kill the Balrog crocodile. Otherwise, everyone would be in trouble. On the west side of the central square, Baiwuya was stopped by Dugu Lai as soon as he arrived. "Brother Dugu, you want to fight me?" Baiwuya looked at Dugu Lai with a grin, not taking him seriously at all. Baiwuya knew that his strength was about the same as Dugu Lai's. If they really fought, neither of them would come out on top. "What do you think?" Dugu Lai said expressionlessly. "I don't think you want to fight me. If you wanted to, you would have done it already. Why bother talking nonsense?" Baiwuya said with a look of understanding. "Help me deal with Wei Xing, and we'll split the points she drops 50-50. Then we'll kill the Balrog crocodile, and we'll split the points equally," Dugu Lai said bluntly. "Not a bad idea. But how do you know Wei Xing doesn't have any helpers? She's Wei Beitong's granddaughter. Don't you know what kind of person the old man is? With such a scheming grandfather, do you think Wei Xing is an idiot?" Baiwuya asked back. "Then what do you mean, Brother Bai?" Dugu Lai stared at Baiwuya and asked. "What I mean is that the two of us aren't enough. If 2 more come, then there won't be a problem," Baiwuya replied. "Who do you want to find? The others have all been killed by me. I'm afraid they won't be willing to form an alliance with me." Dugu Lai's face darkened. "No need to find them. They're already here." Baiwuya smiled slyly. Just as he finished speaking, 2 figures, one yellow and one black, walked out from a nearby building. Dugu Lai's face changed slightly when he saw the 2. Gu Kuan and Zhong Jidao. He had forgotten about them. Among the top 20 examinees, Dugu Lai had only killed 5 of them. Wei Xing, Gu Kuan, Zhong Jidao, Baiwuya, and Li Daochong. Dugu Lai wasn't sure about the first one, Wei Xing, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Gu Kuan and Zhong Jidao came from the 3rd ring starfield, so their ranks were 1 grade higher. Dugu Lai didn't know much about them, so he didn't put them on the kill list. Another reason was that their points weren't above Dugu Lai's. As for Baiwuya, Dugu Lai was prepared to deal with him on the last day. As long as he killed Baiwuya, Dugu Lai would surpass Wei Xing and become first place. As for Li Daochong, Dugu Lai had been chasing him for the past 2 days. All the examinees' positions were displayed on the points belt, so there was no way to hide. However, Li Daochong's position was constantly changing, and he was moving very quickly. Occasionally, he would stop. As long as Dugu Lai was within 10 kilometers of Li Daochong, he would immediately move. Dugu Lai chased him for 3 days, but he didn't even see Li Daochong's shadow. He was even more slippery than a loach. Dugu Lai felt that Li Daochong seemed to know that he was looking for him, so he was very vigilant. As for the actual situation, if Dugu Lai knew, he would definitely vomit blood. Li Daochong didn't even wear the points belt. Instead, he tied it to the Tsang ink. Then, he placed 3 trigger talismans on the Tsang ink. One was an alarm talisman. As long as someone approached, the Tsang ink would automatically fly away. The alarm talisman would sense different distances based on the strength of one's aura. The stronger the aura, the earlier the alarm talisman would trigger the alarm. The weaker the aura, the closer the alarm talisman was. As for the other 2 talismans, one was a fire talisman, and the other was an ice talisman. If someone happened to enter within 100 meters, the 2 talismans would attack. Of course, it was almost impossible to get within 100 meters. The flying speed of a magic treasure weapon was not something that ordinary people could get close to. It was impossible for those below the Foundation establishment stage. Even those above the Foundation establishment stage had to be capable. Even if someone got close, the 2 strengthened level 8 talismans would be enough to make them suffer. In addition, the Tsang ink itself was also aggressive. Li Daochong could control it from a distance. What was even more shameless was that even if he discovered that Song Ink and caught up, he could still block the attacks of the two talismans. Even if he caught that Song Ink and took Li Daocheng's points belt, it would be useless. Because it was useless to take his points belt, you would not get a single point. You would have to kill Li Daocheng to get half the points, or he would give you the points willingly. Otherwise, it would be useless even if you destroyed the points belt. Li Daocheng's points would still be the same. Li Daocheng would hunt the Ghost King in the Thousand Ghost City, and then the points on his points belt would still increase. Li Daocheng did this not because he was afraid of anyone, but because he wanted to cultivate his telekinesis perception and control that Song Ying from a distance. Since he was idle, Li Daocheng did not want to waste time. If he had the chance to cultivate, he would make use of it. In the soul dream space, other than telekinesis, nothing else could be cultivated. As for Du Gulai's pursuit, Li Daocheng did not know at all. Therefore, Du Gulai thought that he was chasing after Li Daocheng for the past 3 days, and the latter was running away in fear. In fact, he had just been tricked, but neither side knew. Neither the person being tricked nor the person being tricked knew. However, the recruitment teachers and observers who were watching this scene from the outside knew what was going on. How did this kid think of this method? One of the recruitment teachers said in surprise. How cunning. More of the recruitment teachers said. Old man Qian, Li Daocheng usually looks quiet and cool. I didn't expect him to have such a cunning side. Yung Byung-ha said in surprise. Yeah, you can't judge a book by its cover. You can't measure it. Qin Changhai said with a deep face. Can't measure it? Isn't the sea water immeasurable? Yung Byung-ha turned his face and said. If you can't measure it, you have to feel it with your hands. Qin Changhai murmured. What? Yung Byung-ha was dumbfounded. When he looked carefully, Qin Changhai was not looking at the screen. This old man's pair of muddy old eyes were staring straight at a female teacher's perky chest. His neck was stretched out as if he wanted to crawl into her arms. Chapter 3:27. Duan Yuhao looked at Li Daocheng, who had just killed a Ghost King, on the screen and shouted, Too despicable, too shameless. He really suits my taste. Tang Xian, who was sitting at the back, had a faint smile on her face. Li Daocheng's actions were always unexpected. Young miss, this kid's strength is unfathomable, and his brain is also very clever. Du Gulai was fooled by him for 3 days without knowing what happened. Li Daocheng's future achievements will not be low. Young miss, North Star University has been left behind by the other 3 universities in recent years. If we don't hurry up and recruit talents, I'm afraid we will fall behind. You really made the right choice in recruiting Li Daocheng, Assistant Xiao Wei praised. Yeah, but it's a pity that this kid isn't very interested in North Star University. With his performance, there will be a lot of universities looking for him after this. Our chances are very slim. Tang Xian was obviously not confident. Young miss, that won't happen. I don't believe anyone will reject your invitation. You're the most popular celebrity in the Federation. The number of people pursuing you can line up from Kangwu Planet all the way to the Central Starfield, Xiao Wei encouraged. It's not like you haven't seen that kid before. Can't you see that he doesn't care about women at all? Tang Xian shook her head. Ah, young miss, you're not really thinking about seducing him, are you? Xiao Wei was shocked. After following young miss for so many years, Xiao Wei understood her personality too well. Young Miss Tang would never use herself as a bargaining chip. Tang Xian did not answer. Her beautiful eyes were deeply looking at the screen. Her mind was constantly thinking about how to take down Li Daocheng. After thinking for a while, Tang Xian could not think of a reason. This guy seemed to be unmoved by force or persuasion. He was so opinionated that it was impossible for others to influence his thoughts. Xiao Wei, why you keep following me? I remember that you could have had a better development back then. You could have even become an artist, Tang Xian suddenly asked. Xiao Wei was stunned. She did not know why young miss suddenly asked such a question. She was a little confused. After a few seconds of silence, Xiao Wei thought about it and replied, Because young miss treats me sincerely and is very good to me. It was a simple and honest answer without any embellishments. Tang Xian's beautiful eyebrows slightly raised, and she smiled. Xiao Wei, thank you. Xiao Wei was stunned again. She looked at Tang Xian in confusion. Young miss, why are you thanking me? I should be the one thanking you. If it's not you and me, I would be wandering around the five-ring star. I would have been married to be a normal person. Tang Xian's smile widened. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm thanking you because you let me know how to recruit Li Daochong. Xiao Wei's face was filled with question marks. Me? How? Xiao S's. Was not none in it assess. Zhao's thought. Why did he only understand now? Inside the Soul Dream space, Li Daochong had already arrived near the central plaza. He glanced at Wei Xing, who was standing on a tall building in the distance, and smiled before disappearing into a house. Wei Xing's brows were slightly furrowed as she stood on the edge of the platform on the top floor of the building. There was still 15 minutes until the refresh time, and Li Daochong was nowhere to be seen. His point belt showed that he was still more than 20 kilometers away. What was even more hateful was that the kid did not show any signs of moving. Young Miss Wei, didn't you say that Li Daochong had already agreed to form an alliance with you? Why hasn't he appeared yet? Is he running away? Pu Guangtian said coldly. Of course he's scared. I've seen too many people like him. Yi Renjian said disdainfully. These two had been defeated by Dugalai and by Wu Ye, but now they were standing behind Wei Xing as the Hung and Ha generals. In fact, Wei Xing had only asked for help from Li Daochong and no one else. In her opinion, Li Daochong was enough to team up with her. Yi Renjian and Pu Guangtian were the ones who came to her. They were willing to work for Wei Xing, hoping that Wei Xing could take care of Dugalai and Bai Wuye. Wei Xing's expression was as cold as ice. She was very angry that Li Daochong had stood her up. At this moment, 4 figures quickly arrived and landed on the platform in the blink of an eye. They were Dugalai, Bai Wuye, Gu Kuan, and Zhong Jidao. Even the defeated is here. Brother Pu, what? Do you want to be killed by me again? Bai Wuye pretended to be surprised. The locations of the candidates were public, so Bai Wuye naturally knew that Pu Guangtian and Yi Renjian were with Wei Xing. His words were naturally filled with mockery. Pu Guangtian's expression darkened. I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Bai Wuye smiled. Is that so? Just as he finished speaking, a sword light flashed and shot towards Bai Wuye's stomach. Bai Wuye was shocked. He threw out the 2 steel balls he was playing with and sent out a seal with his palm. Clang! The sword light hit the seal and canceled each other out. Bai Wuye was sent flying. His chest felt stuffy, and he was shocked. However, before he could stabilize himself, 3 more sword lights came at him. They were fierce and fast. Bai Wuye felt a chill run down his spine. That sword light didn't seem to be anything special, but when he really faced it, he realized that it was fierce and domineering. It even carried the power of the profound heaven. Bai Wuye had already suffered internal injuries from that one attack. Now, 3 more sword lights came at him. Are they trying to kill me in an instant? Bai Wuye screamed in his heart. The one who attacked was none other than Wei Xing. This woman was even crazier than the rumors said. She didn't even bother to talk nonsense with you. She just attacked. Whether Bai Wuye dodged or blocked the 3 sword lights, it was all beyond his ability. Just as Bai Wuye thought that he was about to return to the safe zone, a red light shot over and blocked in front of Bai Wuye. The red light was a huge flaming blade. The blade was more than 5 inches wide and had a serrated edge. It was Du Gu Lai's Fire Crystal Domineering Blade, a heaven-tier mid-level weapon. It had Fire Spirit Chi and could increase the power of fire element techniques by 15%. Clang, clang, clang. With 3 crisp sounds, the 3 sword lights were blocked. Bai Wuye's reaction was fast. Seeing that he was saved, he immediately attacked. 2 steel balls shot out like cannonballs towards Wei Xing. These 2 steel balls were naturally Bai Wuye's weapon, Star Spirit Beads. They were also heaven-tier, mid-level magic treasures. They were made from Star Spirit crystals and Age Silver. Age Silver was a rare magic gold. There was nothing special about it, but it was a powerful catalyst. When it was fused with other magic gold, It could increase the grade of the original magic gold by a level. Wei Xing opened her hand, and a shield formed from spirit chi appeared in front of her. The star spirit beads smashed into the shield, and the beads were blown away. Bai Wuye's heart was filled with shock. Wei Xing had casually blocked his full force attack with a casual move. This strength was truly terrifying. Bai Wuye was secretly glad that he had formed an alliance with the other three. Otherwise, if he met Wei Xing alone, he might not even have a chance to fight back. Du Gulai saw that Bai Wuye's attack did not succeed. He waved his hand, and the fire crystal domineering blade slashed down, bringing along a ball of flames. Wei Xing's expression changed slightly. Dragon scale sword appeared in her hand, and she slashed out. Soul-severing slash. This was the same move she used on the flying ghost shuttle to deal with the innocent woman and the zombie ghost. Boom! The two weapons clashed, and a loud sound rang out. An intense explosion occurred, and the building collapsed. Wei Xing's feet were already in the air. The fire crystal domineering blade was sent flying. Almost at the same time, an ancient bell flew towards Wei Xing. Even Wei Xing could not dodge in time. She struck out with her palm, and the spirit chi in her palm formed a cyclone. Pong! The palm hit the ancient bell. Dong! A long and ancient bell sound rang out. Wei Xing felt a wave of dizziness. The sound of the bell had a powerful sound wave attack. This ancient bell was Zhong Jidao's Dharma treasure weapon, the demon subduing bell. It was made from pan silver core. Pan silver was the lowest grade Dharma metal, but every pan silver or vein would have a crystal core. The size of the crystal core varied according to the size of the vein. However, even if it was 1,000 miles long vein, the crystal core would only be the size of an egg. Pan silver core was 2 grades higher than pan silver and 1 grade higher than star spear crystals. It was the lowest grade Dharma metal required to make a mystical spirit treasure. The demon subduing bell was 1.5 meters tall, 0.5 meter in diameter, and 1 inch thick. The amount of pan silver core needed to make such a huge ancient bell was imaginable. This was a high-grade heaven-grade Dharma treasure, 1 grade higher than Bai Wuye and Du Gulai's Dharma treasures. Wei Xing actually managed to block the attack with her seemingly frail and delicate hand. Zhong Jidao was shocked. He didn't expect Wei Xing to be so strong. Even among the geniuses in the third ring starfield, not many could block his bell with their bare hands. The top 5 geniuses attacked Wei Xing at the same time, but they still could not do anything to her. Such strength was unrivaled in the entire fourth ring starfield. The long spear in Gu Kuan's hand was ready to attack. The spear was like a dragon, ready to launch the 4th wave of attacks at Wei Xing. But this time, Pu Guantian and Yi Renjian, who had just reacted, attacked at the same time. The first 3 waves of attacks were too fast for these two to react. Pu Guantian's blade was a blade art passed down from the ancestors of the Pu family. It was unpredictable and unpredictable. The blade was only 1 meter long and 4 fingers wide. The blade was not a strong blade, but a sly blade art. Pu Guangtian threw the blade at Gu Kuan. Yi Renjian activated the power of the Black Tortoise bloodline and slashed with the Black Tortoise sword. Gu Kuan had no intention of attacking Wei Xing after being attacked by 2 experts. He had no choice but to withdraw his spear and block the incoming blade. Then, he raised his spear and clashed with the Black Tortoise sword. Gu Kuan took a small step back, while Yi Renjian was pushed back more than 10 meters. Both of them stood in the air without any support. Under the fierce collision, they did not lose their balance. However, Gu Kuan had the upper hand in terms of strength. Yi Renjian, who had activated the power of the Black Tortoise bloodline, was completely suppressed. Bai Wuye, Du Guli, and Zhong Jidao looked at each other and attacked Wei Xing again. Gu Kuan fought Yi Renjian and Pu Guantian alone. In the air beside the central square, the 7 geniuses displayed their abilities and fought fiercely. The surrounding buildings were affected. In just a few breaths' time, a few buildings collapsed. Although Wei Xing was strong, under the encirclement of the 3, she could not attack anymore. Every time they exchanged blows, Wei Xing would curse Li Daochong in her heart. Stinky brat, you dare to trick me. Wait until the end of the test. I will teach you a lesson. Du Gili and Zhong Jidao's attacks were powerful and had a wide range. When they attacked at the same time, Wei Xing could only take it head-on. Bai Wuye's two-star soul orbs were small and exquisite, but like hidden weapons, they were hard to catch. Under high speed, they were easy to sneak attack. After a round of probing, Du Gili and Zhong Jidao forced Wei Xing to take it head-on. Meanwhile, Bai Wuye stopped his attacks and floated to the side, looking for an opening. Once Wei Xing showed an opening, he would immediately launch a fatal attack. Zhong Jidao's demon-subduing bell suddenly grew 3 times bigger and shot towards Wei Xing. Du Gili's fire crystal domineering blade slashed towards Wei Xing's slim waist. As Du Gili attacked, he muttered to himself, "Beauty Wei, you are lucky that we are in the spiritual dream space. If we were in the real world, I would not have the heart to be so cruel to you." Wei Xing's dragon scale sword shot into the sky and blocked the demon-subduing bell. She took out a protection talisman and shot out a dozen talismans to block the fire crystal domineering blade. Bai Wuye's eyes narrowed. Du Gili and Zhong Jidao's mental transmission came at the same time. Now is the time. Kill her. All of Bai Wuye's spirit chi gathered in his palms, and two-star soul orbs shot out like rockets with fuel. Wei Xing's beautiful face was filled with shock. Her beautiful eyes flashed with despair. The first place that should have been so easy to obtain was gone just like that. Bastard! Wei Xing cursed. Bai Wuye, Du Gili, and Zhong Jidao thought she was cursing them, but Wei Xing was actually cursing Li Daochong. Piss off! Before Wei Xing could finish cursing, another curse sounded. The two curses came one after another, almost overlapping each other. Li Daochong appeared in the air a few meters in front of Bai Wuye. He held the Tsang ink with both hands and swung it, using the two-star soul orbs as if they were baseballs. Clang! The two-star soul orbs that Bai Wuye had just shot out were bounced back. The distance was too close and the speed was too fast. Plus, it happened so suddenly that even Bai Wuye, who was in the late-stage foundation establishment level, couldn't react in time. Bai Wuye's face was completely blank. His two-star soul orbs pierced through his chest and came out from his back. Chapter 328. Wei Xing, who was in despair, looked at Li Daochong, who had appeared out of nowhere. She pursed her lips and coldly snorted. "Why are you only here now? I've been here for a while. I was waiting for an opportunity to strike." Li Daochong smiled. "You've been here for a while? The location doesn't show that you're nearby." Wei Xing frowned. She clearly didn't believe Li Daochong's words. "That's just the location of the point belt, not mine," Li Daochong replied. Wei Xing thought for a moment, but still cursed inwardly. "Stinking brat, you're using me as bait." Li Daochong had been watching from below, waiting for the best opportunity to strike. He was determined to strike with one strike. The central plaza was 200 to 300 kilometers away from the revival area. It would take Bai Wuye at least half an hour to get here. With one dead, there were 3 left. The situation had taken a turn for the worse. Just now, the 3 of them had surrounded Wei Xing and used all of their strength to barely gain the upper hand and get a chance to kill her. Li Daochong's appearance not only destroyed Bai Wuye, Du Gili, and Zhong Jidao's strategy, but also killed Bai Wuye instantly. Gu Kuan was still being held back by Yi Rinjian and Pu Guangtian. The balance of power was tipped in Wei Xing's favor. Du Gili gritted his teeth and said to Zhong Jidao, "Brother Zhong, how long can you keep Wei Xing occupied?" Zhong Jidao paused for a moment, then said 5 minutes. Du Gili narrowed his eyes. 5 minutes is enough. Then I'll have to trouble Brother Zhong to hold Wei Xing back. I'll come help you after I kill Li Daochong. Zhong Jidao nodded. Be quick. Wei Xing is really strong. Du Gili said confidently, "Don't worry. Li Daochong is nothing to be afraid of. I've been looking for him for the past few days. That brat runs faster than a weasel. He's very afraid of me." Zhong Jidao didn't have time to say anything. Wei Xing had already attacked. One less person meant one less restraint. Wei Ziying didn't need to be distracted and attacked with all of her strength. Almost at the same time, Li Daochong also moved. His target was obviously Dugalai. "Yo, kid, isn't your zodiac sign a rat?" He ran the moment he saw me. With Wei Ziying's support, he turned into a tiger and even dared to take the initiative to attack, Dugalai said in shock. Li Daochong did not understand what Du Gili was saying at all. He did not want to waste any more time. The Tsang ink in his hand chopped down, bringing along a strand of spirit sun lightning. He used the first layer of the 9 crack saber arts, shattering rocks and shattering earth. Although it was only the first layer, and its power was naturally not as great as the later layers, Li Daochong's current cultivation was incomparable. The power of this saber was far greater than when he first learned it. "You want to compete in saber force with me?" "Brat, aren't you hitting a rock with an egg?" Dugalai sneered. Not only Dugalai, but many of the admissions teachers and observers who were watching this scene in front of the spirit vision shook their heads. He felt that Li Daochong was too reckless. Dugalai had the fire crystal overlord saber and cultivated the mountain splitter art. It was domineering and ferocious, making him invincible against opponents of the same level. Dugalai had used only one saber strike to instantly defeat his opponents in the Kangwoo Stars Hegemony Tournament, from the preliminaries to the semi-finals to the finals. He only used his true strength in the finals. Out of the 5 finals, he only lost to Wei Ziying. He defeated Bai Wuye after more than 100 moves. The most powerful part of the mountain splitter art was its ferocity. Every move was as ferocious as a tiger. Dugalai's Fire Crystal Overlord Saber was specially prepared for this saber art. Its power was already impressive, and the Fire Crystal Overlord Saber could increase it by another 15%. In terms of ferocious saber force, Dugalai was the best on the Kanwu Star. Li Daochong is going to suffer. Yeah, he might be instantly defeated by Dugalai in one move. Wasn't this kid quite smart before? Why did he make such a stupid move now? An observer said regretfully. There are times when people are muddle-headed. Li Daochong is still young and lacks actual combat experience. It's understandable. Understandable, my ass. Just based on this, Li Daochong will have to drop from first gear to second gear. When he does understand his opponent, he can test the waters first. How can he attack so fiercely right from the start? Isn't he digging a hole for himself? When Xiaowei saw Li Daochong's saber coming down, Dugalai gathered his spirit energy and raised the giant saber in his hand and swung it. She cried out, "No!" Xiaowei's attitude toward Li Daochong had unknowingly changed. Now, she hoped that he could achieve better results. Little did she know that the situation had suddenly changed. She was so scared that her face turned pale. On the side, Tang Xian's beautiful face revealed a look of confusion. She also felt that Li Daochong's actions were a little too reckless. This was exactly what Dugalai wanted. "Young Master Duan, this kid is going to die." Dugalai's Tyrant Saber is already invincible in the same realm. Li Daochong's cultivation is not even as good as Dugalai's. The beautiful teacher on Duan Yuhao's shoulder said with a red face. Duan Yuhao had one hand on the beautiful teacher's, and did not stop rubbing it. However, there was some confusion on his face. Duan Yuhao also did not understand why Li Daochong wanted to fight with Dugalai. If he was facing Dugalai, he would not have done so. Everyone agreed that Li Daochong would lose. If he could withstand Dugalai's Tyrant Saber without dying, it would be a victory. Li Daochong naturally did not know what the people outside were thinking. In short, he just swung his saber. Dugalai revealed a sinister smile. The first layer of the mountain-splitting saber art, Mountain-Shaking Tiger. Dugalai swung the Fire Crystal Tyrant Saber in a circle, creating a several-meter-long, flaming saber shadow. It was extremely overbearing. Dugalai already had the upper hand. Clang! Song Ink and the Fire Crystal Tyrant Saber clashed together, creating a sharp and crisp sound. Immediately after, boom! The flames exploded like an explosion of explosives. There were several lightning bolts mixed in it. Song Ink's Spirit Sun Lightning and the flame on the Fire Crystal Tyrant Saber collided and exploded. Dougalai's lips curled up into a smile. However, the smile froze before it could form. He did not feel anything during the clash, but after the clash, a wave of hidden energy came one after another. Dougalai's hand went numb, and his arm was sore. After pausing for a second or two, he could no longer control himself and retreated. What? The teachers and observers in the hall who had just expressed their regret were all shocked. Dougalai was forced to retreat after clashing with the saber. How could it be? Xiao Wei, who had shouted no, covered her mouth with a shocked expression. Her scream was so unnecessary that it was a bit funny. Tang Xian smiled. This guy did not seem to be satisfied if he did not give people some surprises. Li Daochong, what kind of person are you? Tang Xian had a big question mark in her heart. Ah, young Master Duan, be gentle. You're hurting me. The beautiful teacher twisted her body and said coquettishly, Haha, sorry. I was too excited to control my hand. However, it feels really good. Teacher Su usually pays a lot of attention to the training of that part. Duan Yuhao laughed. The beautiful teacher looked at Duan Yuhao coquettishly. She seemed to be a bit angry, but her body language was more intimate with Duan Yuhao. The Duan family was a giant in the Federation. How could the beautiful teacher refuse Duan Yuhao? Young Master Duan, Li Daochong actually forced Dougalai to retreat. What kind of cultivation method is this kid practicing? It's so overbearing. Teacher Su asked suspiciously. I can't tell either. It should be similar to Dougalai's mountain splitting saber art, but its grade might be higher. Duan Yuhao guessed. Duan Yuhao's guess was not far from the truth. The beautiful teacher said in surprise, even if Li Daochong's cultivation method is superior to Dougalai's, his cultivation is 2 stages lower than Dougalai's. He is only at the early stage of foundation establishment. Li Daochong's cultivation was indeed at the early stage of foundation establishment when he entered the Soul Dream space. However, no one knew that he was at the middle stage of foundation establishment. Of course, even if Li Daochong was still at the early stage of foundation establishment, Dougalai would still have to retreat. The most shocked person was Dougalai himself. His face was filled with disbelief. The area between his thumb and forefinger was unbearable. He was about to attack in anger, but when he raised his head, Li Daochong had already rushed over. Li Daochong had a faint smile on his face. He did not care about Li Daochong at all. Among the 40,000 candidates, only Wei Xing could fight with Li Daochong. Li Daochong attacked with a combo. He had no intention of stopping. 9 split saber arts, second stage, mountain crumbles, and earth splits. Compared to the first attack, it was even faster. Dougalai was shocked and angry. He used all his skills and shouted, Mountain splitting saber arts, second stage, mountain splitting. The 2 sabers clashed again. Clang, crack. This time, there was no explosion. With a crisp sound, a crack appeared on Dougalai's fire crystal overlord saber. Dougalai quickly retreated more than 10 steps. The blood vessels on his arm burst. His entire arm was covered in blood. His spiritual form was no different from the real one. Dougalai felt the same as before. He was not at a disadvantage in the instant exchange. However, Li Daochong's saber energy was layered. It seemed like only one attack, but the saber energy was like a wave. Each wave was fiercer than the last. Soon, he would be pushed back by the saber energy behind it. What Dougalai felt was the profound meaning of 9 split saber art, rupture. In fact, Dougalai was able to resist the rupture effect and was only pushed back. It was already very impressive. If he was not strong enough, Li Daochong would have ended Dougalai with 1 attack. The rupture effect would have been enough to blast Dougalai into pieces. Dougalai was in the late stage of foundation establishment. His cultivation was deep, and his spirit chi was solid. Otherwise, he would have been in the safe zone. However, even if he blocked 2 attacks, he would not have been in the safe zone. His situation was not much better. Li Daochong's 3rd attack followed. 9 split saber arts, 3rd stage, earth-splitting sea sinking. Dougalai wanted to cry. At that moment, he really wanted to turn around and run. However, there were at least 1,000 candidates watching the battle from afar. There were also admissions teachers watching from outside. If Ghoul really wanted to run away, even if his final ranking was not bad, those true famous schools would not want him. People who were afraid of death would not have great prospects. This would become a stain on his life. Therefore, Ghoul could not dodge it all. He gritted his teeth and raised his fire crystal overlord saber to block again. Boom! Crack! Li Daocheng's attack was truly earth-shattering. The surrounding ground cracked for dozens of meters. Half of Ghoul's body sank into the ground. The fire crystal overlord saber was broken in two. Ghoul's blood vessels exploded. Soon, his body disappeared and returned to the safe zone. 3 attacks killed Ghoul. Whether it was the central square of the 1,000 Ghost City in the dream space or the hundreds of admissions teachers and observers watching from outside, they all watched the scene with their mouths agape. It was as if their breathing had stopped. Li Daocheng had killed by Wu Ye and Ghoul in 3 attacks. His points had increased by 15 million. Adding his previous points, he had a total of 28 million points. He had surpassed Wei Xing in one fell swoop. Li Daocheng's name jumped to the top of the scoreboard. Chapter 329. If it wasn't for the fact that Li Daocheng didn't want to use the last 5 layers of the 9 split saber arts, he would have only needed 1 slash to deal with Ghoul. The first 3 layers of the saber arts were much weaker, so 2 more slashes wouldn't make much of a difference. It would only take a dozen seconds. Ghoul was confident that he could deal with Li Daocheng within 5 minutes, but he ended up in the safe zone in less than half a minute. His face was swollen like a pig's head. On the other side, the battle between Wei Xing and Zhong Jidao was still going on, but the two didn't go all out. Instead, they focused more on the battle between Ghoul and Li Daocheng. Zhong Jidao's face was filled with shock. He never thought that Li Daocheng would be able to defeat Ghoul so easily. Wei Xing's expression didn't change, but there was a hint of admiration in her eyes. Li Daocheng's strength was above her expectations. Li Daocheng held its song ink and flashed over. Zhong Jidao's eyes were filled with fear. He threw out 3 talismans at Li Daocheng. Talismans? Li Daocheng grinned. His hand shook and 5 talismans shot out. Pung, pung, pung. 3 explosions sounded in the air, creating waves of fire. 2 more talismans passed through the waves of fire and shot toward Zhong Jidao. What? Zhong Jidao didn't think that Li Daocheng's talismans would be so powerful. The 3 talismans he shot out canceled each other out. Zhong Jidao didn't dare to be careless. He put the demon subduing bell in front of him. Pung pung. The 2 talismans exploded when they hit the demon subduing bell. The demon subduing bell buzzed. Before Zhong Jidao could catch his breath, a sword light slashed toward him. Wei Xing made her move. Zhong Jidao hastily tried to block, but the demon subduing bell barely blocked the sword light. However, this sword light was just a feint from Wei Xing. She didn't use her full strength to distract Zhong Jidao. In the next second, Wei Xing appeared behind Zhong Jidao and stabbed her sword into his back. Zhong Jidao disappeared with an unwilling expression and returned to the safe zone. At this time, Gu Kuan saw that the situation was not right. He shot out his spear and forced Yi Renjian and Pu Guangtian back. Then, he turned around and flew away on his spear. If it was just Yi Renjian and Pu Guangtian, Gu Kuan wouldn't be able to deal with them in a short time. With Li Daocheng and Wei Xing joining forces, he had no chance of winning. To protect himself, Gu Kuan immediately gave up on escaping. As long as he did not die and his points did not change, that would be the best outcome. The other 3 were all killed once, and their points dropped by half. Gu Kuan's ranking rose to the 3rd place. With Wei Xing's personality, there was no way she would let anyone escape. However, just as she was about to give chase, a black mist began to swirl in the center of the plaza, and the aura of death began to spread. A black shadow quickly condensed. The final boss, Balrog Crocodile, was spawned by the system. Roar! A deafening roar soared into the sky. The waves of death aura dispersed in all directions. Those examinees who were watching from afar thought that they were in a safe position. However, this surging death chi with black flames surged over like 10,000 horses galloping. Run! Some examinees realized that something was wrong and turned to run. With someone taking the lead to run, the rest scattered. No one dared to stay in the vicinity and hurriedly retreated more than 10 kilometers. Wherever the death fire passed, not a single tile was left. All the buildings within a radius of 10 kilometers were burned to ashes. The death fire lava emitted from the Balrog demon crocodile's body melted the ground. Wherever it passed, it was like hell on earth. The Balrog demon crocodile's body was surrounded by a layer of black mist. Within the black mist, there were death fire flames. The central plaza had already turned into a plaza of lava. Furthermore, the death fire lava was spreading at an extremely fast speed. From time to time, humanoid death fire demons would jump out of the lava. They were humanoid monsters formed by the lava. This Balrog demon crocodile actually had additional attributes. It was much stronger than the Balrog demon crocodile in the real world. Wei Ziying and Li Daochong looked at each other. The two of them did not speak. They only nodded and charged towards the Balrog demon crocodile together. Wei Ziying's cultivation technique was the ancient cultivation technique, Dragon Shadow, sword technique, that Wei Beitong had obtained from an ancient family. This sword technique was classified as an upper-grade heaven-class cultivation technique. However, Wei Beitong had told Wei Ziying that this sword technique had already surpassed the category of cultivation techniques. Wei Ziying's hand loosened, and the dragon scale sword flew out. She muttered a few words and pointed with 2 fingers. The sword shadow transformed into a white flood dragon that charged towards the Balrog demon crocodile. Li Daochong's eyes were filled with shock. What kind of sword technique was this? It could actually transform into a dragon. Roar! The loud roar interrupted Li Daochong's thoughts. The Balrog demon crocodile waved its sharp claws, and a ball of lava was thrown out towards the white flood dragon shadow. Boom! The lava ball and a white flood dragon shadow collided, and a violent explosion occurred. The flood dragon shadow dissipated, and a lava ball shattered. The dragon scale sword's momentum did not decrease. It pierced through the smoke caused by the explosion and shot towards the Balrog demon crocodile. Just as the dragon scale sword was about to pierce through the Balrog demon crocodile's head, a few death fire Balrog jumped out and blocked the dragon scale sword. Unknowingly, Li Daochong had already arrived more than 10 meters in front of the flame magic crocodile. He stood on a rock that was floating on top of the dead flame magma, and the Tsang Mo in his hand was already ready to attack. 9 cracks saber arts, heaven-shattering slash. Song Ink's saber shadow soared into the sky, and a huge, spiritualized saber appeared instantly, slashing towards the Balrog demon crocodile. A black light flashed in the Balrog demon crocodile's pupils that were burning with death fire. The Balrog demon crocodile stretched out its huge claw and caught the spiritualized saber shadow. Clang! Spirit chi and death chi clashed and annihilated each other. Black smoke rose from the Balrog demon crocodile's huge claw as if it was being burnt. The Balrog demon crocodile felt a wave of pain and swung its huge claw that caught the saber shadow. Li Daochong was thrown out like a kite with a broken string. He only stopped when he was hundreds of meters away, and the force behind him smashed a building that had sunk into the lava into pieces. Li Daochong's chi and blood were churning, and he was slightly unstable. The Balrog demon crocodile had actually broken Li Daochong's heaven-shattering slash. Li Daochong's expression revealed a hint of surprise. Even the heaven-shattering slash, the 4th level, was ineffective against it. The Balrog demon crocodile was indeed a powerful ground tank of the Hades, a soul-catcher level ghost beast. The one before him was merely a spirit sequence simulated by the system spirit. Li Daochong subconsciously swallowed as he imagined the scene of such a ghost beast appearing on the frontline battlefield. Although Li Daochong's attack did not succeed, the Balrog demon crocodile seemed to be angered by Li Daochong. After shaking him off, A pair of Tyrannosaurus Rex's strong hind legs stomped on the ground. Bang! A huge crater exploded in the lava. The Balrog demon crocodile's huge body rushed toward Li Daochong, its speed as fast as a desert lizard. It was so fast that it made people speechless. Li Daochong's Tsang ink swept across, licked the corner of his lips, and silently chanted, 9 crack saber technique, 5th stage, star slashing slash. Almost at the same time, Wei Xing launched an attack in the air. The dragon scale sword once again turned into a white dragon, but this time it was bigger and more solid. The fangs in the dragon's mouth were the dragon scale sword's edge. Dragon shadow, sword technique, 2nd stage, dragon roaring in the heavens. The Balrog demon crocodile sensed danger, and its body paused. It looked up at the sky, opened its huge mouth, and roared. A ball of dark fire was spat out. The dark fire and the white dragon collided. The white dragon formed by spirit energy was actually melted, and the dark fire continued to rush toward Wei Xing, who was floating in the air. It was actually ineffective. Wei Xing clenched her teeth. This bastard was actually so strong. Her pair of jade-like hands instantly struck out dozens of palms, and each palm was accompanied by a seal. Pung, pung, pung. The seals and the dark fire collided, layers of barriers, and clashed. The dark fire became weaker and weaker, and finally disappeared. Wei Xing's breathing became unstable. Using the Dragon Shadow Sword technique once consumed a lot of energy, and Wei Xing would not use it in a normal battle. Below, after the Balrog demon crocodile spat out a mouthful of dark fire, it rushed toward Li Daochong again. Li Daochong's Tsang ink had already made his move. The star slashing slash was executed, and in a flash, the blade light was like a star flashing in the sky. Zong! The Balrog demon crocodile's momentum did not decrease. It raised its arm, and the scales on its arm opened, forming an oval black scale shield. Dang boom! Li Daochong was sent flying, and the Balrog demon crocodile was frozen in place. It was a bit dazed. Li Daochong was once again sent flying several hundred meters. The Balrog demon crocodile was completely different from all the dark ghosts Li Daochong had encountered before. It was so strong that it was somewhat abnormal. It was simply not on the same level. For the first time, Li Daochong felt a trace of helplessness. The 5th layer of the 9 split blade technique could not do anything to it. The rend effect was completely absorbed by the huge amount of death chi. This meant that the death chi of the Balrog demon crocodile was stronger than Li Daochong's spirit chi. Otherwise, the rend effect would not have been absorbed. Li Daochong's eyes were cold. This was forcing him to use the last few layers of the blade technique. If he did, the spirit brain system would record it all. Li Daochong made up his mind and spat. Bah, since the rend effect can't be used, then I'll do something simple and direct with you. As he spoke, Li Daochong leaped out like a cheetah. He used the phantom flying steps at full power and walked over the magma, as if he were flying. Song Ink's blade dragged a straight line of flames in the magma. Li Daochong was like the vanguard of the self-cultivator army on the battlefield as he charged at the Balrog demon crocodile. Wei Xing, of course, was not idle. The dragon scale sword was her weapon, but apart from that, she also had another piece of equipment. It was the ghost-suppressing mirror that she had made during the 2nd week of the final examination. She had used the materials in the supply box to make it. Infusing spirit chi into the ghost-suppressing mirror, it could emit spirit light. Whether it was dark ghosts or ghost beasts, they were all afraid of spirit light. Wei Xing herself had the heavenly spirit veins. Light-type spirit veins were the bane of dark creatures. With the ghost-suppressing mirror in hand, the spirit chi in Wei Xing's body gathered in her palm. The dim surface of the mirror suddenly lit up. A beam of light shot out, illuminating the ground and completely enveloping the Balrog demon crocodile. Roar! The Balrog demon crocodile let out a painful roar. Its eyes were spitting fire as it looked at Wei Xing in the air. With a bang, The scales on its back suddenly opened, and a pair of huge black scaled wings extended from its back. It was about to soar into the sky. Just as the Balrog demon crocodile took off, Li Daochong rushed over and swung Song Ink at the Balrog demon crocodile's neck. The Balrog demon crocodile was attacked from the front and back. It was incomparably shocked and furious. Its huge claws clawed at Li Daochong. This claw grabbed nothing but air. Li Daochong strangely dodged and leaped up. Song Ink's blade brought along spirit chi lightning as it swept horizontally. Clang! Crack! It hit the Balrog demon crocodile's neck. Roar! The Balrog demon crocodile let out another deafening roar. A 2-inch deep and 3 feet long cut appeared on its neck. But after a while, the cut automatically healed. Only a few strands of spirit chi lingered on it, burning a scar on the surface of the Balrog demon crocodile's body. Li Daochong was like a dancing elf, flashing up and down around the Balrog demon crocodile. Every time he appeared, he would slash with his blade. In the air, the brilliance of the ghost-suppressing mirror in Wei Xing's hand became more and more condensed. The two of them worked together, one up and one down, one far and one close. With tacit cooperation, they suppressed the upgraded Balrog demon crocodile. In the hall, the admissions teachers and observers who were watching the spirit video screen were so absorbed that they even seemed to forget to breathe. Good guys, Wei Xing and Li Daochong have never practiced before, but they can cooperate so well. In the future, when they grow up, they can even fight against Wu Gui together. They can suppress the Balrog demon crocodile at the early stage and peak stage of Foundation establishment. That is a high-level ghost beast that only Jin Dan cultivators can deal with. Wei Xing and Li Daochong will be taken by Qingshu University. Chapter 330. Wei Xing didn't expect her cooperation with Li Daochong to be so good. Her beautiful face couldn't help but reveal a trace of gratification. Wei Xing's spirit veins had awakened at the age of 16. In the 6 years since she started cultivating, she had never cooperated with anyone. This was the first time, but the first time made her feel a kind of excitement in her blood. Looking down at Li Daochong, who was constantly flashing around, Wei Xing's gentle lips curled into a faint smile. Li Daochong didn't have the leisure to think about other things like Wei Xing. He was in the front line, holding back the Balrog crocodile. Although he didn't seem to be at a disadvantage, he was actually in a lot of danger. If it weren't for that brat, Xiao Yinzhao, giving Li Daochong a big gift that allowed him to break through to the middle stage of Foundation establishment, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on. The Balrog crocodile's body was as hard as iron. When Song Ink slashed at it, it was as if he was slashing at ironwood. Apart from leaving a few slash marks, he couldn't cause any substantial damage. Li Daochong had already slashed out hundreds of times, but the effect was minimal. However, he couldn't stop. If he did, the Balrog crocodile would fly up and attack Wei Xing. At this moment, Wei Xing was holding the ghost-suppressing mirror. All of her spiritual energy was constantly pouring into it, making it impossible for her to move. Once she withdrew her spiritual energy, the light emitted by the ghost-suppressing mirror would be greatly reduced or even disappear. This couldn't go on. Li Daochong felt that the spiritual energy in his body was being consumed at an alarming rate. Although the Balrog crocodile was being suppressed, it didn't show any signs of fatigue. The surging lava below provided it with a steady stream of death energy. Li Daochong's eyes narrowed. The momentum of Song Ink's blade didn't decrease as he used his telekinesis to remove all of the remaining talismans. Apart from the ones he gave to Yi Feiyue, there were still 25 talismans left. Li Daochong suddenly jumped back and flew over 30 meters. The talismans in his hand shot out like cannonballs. Bang, bang, bang. The Balrog crocodile's huge body became a target. Every talisman that hit, it would explode violently. The level 8 talisman was not enough to defeat the Balrog demon crocodile. However, under the intense bombardment, the Balrog demon crocodile's death aura could not keep up. The effect of the talisman was once again demonstrated, and Li Daocheng's energy consumption was significantly reduced. Compared to close combat, the consumption was naturally much lower. No matter how good the talisman was, there was a limit to the number of talismans, and the level of the talisman was also a little low. If it was a level 10 talisman, the Balrog crocodile would have been blasted into pieces long ago. Li Daocheng's hand continued to dwindle. When there were only 5 left, Li Daocheng's hand flashed with a brilliant light, and he threw out all 5 at once. Almost at the same time, Li Daocheng turned into a beam of light and shot towards the Balrog demon crocodile. The Tsang ink left his hand and flew towards the Balrog demon crocodile's burning eyes. Li Daocheng, on the other hand, rushed between the Balrog crocodile's legs and threw a punch at the lava below. All the spiritual energy in his body was concentrated in this punch. What is Li Daocheng trying to do? A teacher couldn't understand. Why isn't he attacking the Balrog demon crocodile? Why is he attacking the lava? At the same time, Li Daocheng had already thrown out a punch. Boom! This punch was like a cannonball, exploding the lava below the Balrog demon crocodile. A huge pit with a diameter of more than 50 meters was formed. The connection between the lava and the Balrog demon crocodile was cut off. Song ink shot towards the Balrog demon crocodile's eyes, but it was blocked by the Balrog demon crocodile's claw. When Li Daocheng smashed open the pit, he jumped up and caught Song ink, who was sent flying by the Balrog demon crocodile, as if he had calculated precisely. 9 crack saber art, level 4, sky-shattering slash. In an instant, Wei Ziying seemed to have understood Li Daocheng's intention and threw the ghost-suppressing mirror in her hand. The ghost-suppressing mirror floated steadily in the air, and spiritual light was still shooting out, shining on the Balrog demon crocodile and consuming its death aura. The spiritual light kept shining, and the Balrog demon crocodile's black scales were scorched as if it had been roasted in a furnace. When Wei Ziying threw out the ghost-suppressing mirror, she immediately injected a large amount of spirit qi, so that the ghost-suppressing mirror could hold on for a few seconds. After Wei Ziying threw out the mirror, she waved her hand, and the dragon scale sword flew into the sky. A dragon roar came from the illusory realm. Level 3 of the Dragon Shadow Sword Art, Sky-Breaking Dragon Wave. Wei Ziying was going all out. This was the last attack she could make, and all her spirit qi was drained. A white dragon descended from the sky and rushed towards the Balrog demon crocodile. Although Li Daocheng was still using the level 4 sky-shattering slash, it was more powerful than before. Whoosh! The giant blade shadow came crashing down. The Balrog demon crocodile's eyes, which were as big as gongs, were filled with fear. It let out an earth-shattering roar and stretched out both its claws to hit the giant blade shadow. Bang! The Balrog demon crocodile blocked the blade shadow with brute force. But this time, without the endless lava, the Balrog demon crocodile's death qi could no longer resist the damage. His claws instantly exploded, and so did his arms, which were as thick as buckets. But it was not enough to kill the Balrog demon crocodile, but Li Daocheng was already at the end of his rope. He stood on a floating rock in the distance, panting heavily. Song ink was stuck on the rock, holding the hilt of his blade to support his body. It was difficult for him to even stand. My mission is complete. It's up to you now. Li Daocheng looked at the white dragon in the sky and murmured to himself. Wei Ziying did not hold back, and the white dragon flew towards the Balrog demon crocodile like a shooting star. Boom! The white dragon penetrated the Balrog demon crocodile's body, and the dragon scale sword cut the Balrog demon crocodile in half. At that moment, time seemed to have stopped. Even the space seemed to have frozen. 2 or 3 seconds later, everything started moving again. The Balrog demon crocodile turned into black smoke and disappeared. The lava on the ground solidified, and the humanoid Balrog turned into rocks. Congratulations! The final boss Balrog demon crocodile has been killed. Wei Ziying has received 20 million points. Li Daocheng smiled and fell to the ground with a plop. He had no strength left in his body. Wei Xing could no longer maintain her floating state in the air and quickly fell. Her face was covered in sweat, and her chest was heaving up and down. "Thank you." Wei Xing landed beside Li Daochong. "No need to thank me. Remember my materials." Li Daochong smiled as he lay on the ground. Wei Xing was about to say something when several figures flashed over. The one at the front was Gu Kuan, and the spear in his hand was aimed at Li Daochong's chest. Li Daochong was at the end of his rope, so how could he fight back? He could only watch as Gu Kuan's spear stabbed at him. "Mother asterisk cur." Li Daochong cursed. Wei Xing's beautiful face changed, and she shouted, "You dare!" Gu Kuan didn't care what Wei Xing said. He knew that the two of them were at the end of their rope and couldn't do anything to him. Wei Xing not only received 20 million points from killing the final boss, but also gained the invincible effect. It was impossible to kill her. Therefore, Gu Kuan only had one target, Li Daochong. Now on the leaderboard, Wei Xing returned to the first place, and Li Daochong fell to the second place. As long as Gu Kuan killed Li Daochong, he would become the second place. He was now the third place. Gu Kuan, who was watching from afar, gave up the idea of sneak attacking after seeing Wei Xing and Li Daochong's powerful strength. The Balrog demon crocodile was unimaginably powerful, and Gu Kuan had already accepted the fact that he was the third place. But in the end, when he saw Li Daochong run out of energy, the desire to get a better ranking filled his heart once again. The prizes for the third place and the second place couldn't be compared. Although there was only a difference of one place, the difference was like heaven and earth. Gu Kuan's spear was fast and was about to pierce Li Daochong's chest. Suddenly, swish! A ray of light flashed and blasted towards the back of Gu Kuan's head. At the same time, from 3 different directions, 3 figures bombarded like meteors. A fist blasted towards Gu Kuan's chest. A huge club smashed towards Gu Kuan's head, and a silver snake sword pierced towards Gu Kuan's waist at an extremely tricky angle. Gu Kuan sensed danger. He wanted to disregard everything and kill Li Daochong to get the points first. However, he would also be killed. Even if he obtained Li Daochong's points, the points that Gu Kuan had just obtained, including his own, would be reduced by half. Gu Kuan had no choice but to give up attacking Li Daochong with his spear. He swept horizontally and leaped away. Orson, Ao Kachuan, and Yi Feiyue's attacks missed, but they successfully forced Gu Kuan to retreat. Seeing this, Wei Xing secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Gu Kuan's expression sank. "Do you want to let your points drop by half at the last moment? You should be the one asking that." Just as Gu Kuan finished speaking, a cold voice came from behind him. A sharp blade pierced towards him with thunder and fire. "Companions?" Gu Kuan was startled. He wanted to dodge, but before he could react, a huge figure appeared in front of him. Luo Dahai smashed his fist towards Gu Kuan's face. Gu Kuan wanted to dodge, but a thick vine unknowingly grew out from under his feet and wrapped around him. "What?" Gu Kuan cried out involuntarily. Not far away, Gu Chao smiled but didn't say anything. Magic was his favorite. Bang! Luo Dahai's fist smashed onto Gu Kuan's face. "Constriction? Visit you cure flaw? Copy sandalwood crawl. Who are you?" Gu Kuan glanced at them in disbelief. "Us? Guess," Luo Dahai said in a rough voice. Chapter 331. After more than half a day, the highly anticipated final examination of the joint examination of 100 schools finally ended. However, the rankings weren't immediately announced to the public, just like in previous examinations. The final results would only be announced 3 days later. During this time, the Education Department of the 4th Ring Star region would appoint thousands of teachers to evaluate each examinee's performance in the dream space. To put it bluntly, it was the same as the college entrance exam, only the format was different. On average, each teacher had to review the complete examination videos of more than 40 examinees. The top 50 students would be reviewed by Lan Tong, the Education Department's secretary, and several other higher-ups. These examinees were the most outstanding talents in the fourth ring star region, and were very likely to become the pillars of the Federation's resistance against the Hades in the future. Even a Yuanine great cultivator like Lan Tong didn't dare to be careless and attached great importance to this examination. The fourth ring star region's governor, Master Huayang, also stayed behind to conduct the final review. With two great cultivators overseeing the examination at the same time, naturally no one dared to slack off. Every reviewing teacher focused 120% of their attention on the examination. Although the final results had not yet been announced, the admissions teachers and observers of the various universities who had watched the entire assessment process could basically confirm the final ranking, especially the top 20, which was already set in stone. In their view, the so-called review was just a process to show the importance of the education department. More importantly, it was to tell all the examinees and the public that the examination was absolutely fair and impartial, and that there wouldn't be any corruption. Li Daochong and Wei Xing's final performances were incomparably stunning, suppressing more than 40,000 examinees. There was no need to look at the final scores of these two. Wei Xing was first. Li Daochong was second. However, the rankings below had fluctuated greatly in the last half a day, which was beyond everyone's expectations. Several people who had been favored had their rankings lower than expected. The most tragic one was Gu Kuan. In the end, when Li Daochong was exhausted, he launched a sneak attack, angering many people. In the eyes of most examinees, Wei Xing and Li Daochong were their heroes. This was because the system had said that if the Balrog crocodile wasn't killed, everyone's evaluation would drop by a level and they would be punished by being forced to do manual labor. Moreover, the Balrog crocodile would attack indiscriminately. In other words, even if you didn't try to kill it, it would still go around killing people. If one was killed by a monster, their points would also be halved. This would cause the final rankings to become chaotic, as no one was a match for the flame demon crocodiles. In the final half of the day, the 10,000 Ghost City would become a purgatory, and anyone who encountered it would be unlucky. Wei Xing and Li Daochong risked their lives to kill the Balrog crocodile, which was equivalent to helping everyone. Gu Kuan actually sneak attacked Li Daochong. This kind of behavior was too despicable and was despised by the majority of the examinees. Li Daochong's companions from the Blue Bay Star were even more furious. Killing Gu Kuan once wasn't enough, so Orson, Yi Fei Yue, and Lu Ming joined forces and chased after Gu Kuan in the last half of the day, killing him 3 more times. In the end, Gu Kuan was only left with slightly over 2 million points. He was ranked outside the top 500, the lowest ranking among the seeded candidates. As for the people from the Blue Bay Star, they were extremely united. Although they weren't seeded candidates, they still managed to kill Gu Kuan many times and split his points evenly. In the end, all of them were ranked within the top 100. Lu Ming, Orson, and O Kikin were even ranked within the top 20. Because Yi Fei Yue had Li Daochong's spirit talisman, she rushed into the top 10 in the last half of the day and was ranked 9th, becoming the biggest dark horse in this examination. Du Galai was ranked 3rd, Bai Wuye was ranked 4th, Zhong Jidao was ranked 5th, Pu Guantian was ranked 6th, Yiren Jian was ranked 7th, Ning Xiujie was ranked 8th, and Hua Qingqing was ranked 10th. The top 10 students immediately became the focus of attention. Not long after they returned to their respective residences, recruitment teachers began to pay them a visit. Wei Xing and Li Daochong were naturally the 2 great candidates that all the famous schools were vying for. Not long after Li Daochong returned to the hotel, more than 10 recruitment teachers from famous cultivation schools came over. Not a single one of the Big Four was missing. Moreover, the teachers that were sent to recruit Li Daochong were all high-ranking members of the famous schools. The weakest of them were academicians, and some were even personally sent by deans. However, North Star University and Taiji Academy didn't change their representatives. They were still Tang Xian and Chu Xintong, Xiong Ni from the Grand Pass Combat Academy, and Spirit Talisman University's Changjian was replaced by Lu Huaying. She was a senior academician of Spirit Talisman University and was very famous within the Federation. Both St. Hua University and Qingsu University were unwilling to pass on their responsibilities. They both sent academicians. The former sent academician Zheng Qian, an expert in spiritual machinery, while the latter sent academician Shen Xiaoru, an expert in spiritual energy. These two were incredible. They were very famous in their respective fields and had a very high reputation among the students. Studently, you must come to our St. Hua University. We can provide you with a scholarship that other schools can't. Zheng Qian was full of confidence. Studently, Qingsu University is definitely your best choice. I've seen your battle videos. Your weapon is a saber, and Qingsu University is the #1 blacksmith in the Federation. As long as you come, you can choose any saber artifact you want, Shen Xiaoru said generously. You should come to our Spirit Talisman University. Little friendly, you like making talismans, right? Come, I guarantee that you can use the university's talisman laboratory. Lu Huaying was full of sincerity. Studently, let's talk. Chu Xintong pulled Li Daochong and whispered, Studently, my application has been approved. Our dean learned of your performance and agreed to let you study there. Tang Xian looked at Li Daochong with a smile and only said, Daochong, you need a rest. I'll wait for you. Xiong and I patted Li Daochong's shoulder and it gave him a thumbs up. Good kid, you're amazing. No matter which school you choose, I'll respect your choice. The scene was chaotic and there were too many people. Li Daochong had just returned and needed a rest. He didn't want to talk to anyone at all. I want a rest, Li Daochong said tiredly and entered the room, leaving Yi Yin and Ding Fugue to block these fanatical recruiters. Li Daochong wasn't just tired, he also needed to consolidate his cultivation. After entering the room, he didn't move. Which of these famous teachers wasn't a reputable figure? Many of them showed a hint of dissatisfaction. However, because Li Daochong's performance was too outstanding, they suppressed their dissatisfaction and waited outside the door. A day passed, and Li Daochong didn't come out. Many teachers began to lose their patience, feeling that Li Daochong was putting on airs. 2 days passed, and people began to leave. 3 days passed, and more than half of them left. Only Tang Xian, Zheng Qian, Xiong and I, Lu Huaying, and Shen Xiaoru were left outside the door. Perfected Huayang didn't need to review, but he was very curious about the missing scene and wanted to know what had happened. At that time, he found the relevant personnel to restore it. However, after changing 3 batches of personnel, they still couldn't restore that scene. Lan Tong and Perfected Huayang had no choice but to use their connections to invite the very few special class spirit sequencers on Kanwu planet to restore the missing scene. After 2 days, they finally restored some of the missing 5-minute scene. Although the scene was a little blurry, they could roughly figure out what had happened. The missing 5-minute scene was the scene where Xiao Yinzhao wanted to use the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost to possess Li Daochong. Xiao Yanqing waited for an opportunity to sneak attack Li Daochong and release the soul catcher ghost at the same time. The result was, of course, Li Daochong absorbed it and broke through to mid-stage foundation establishment. However, Xiao Yanqing didn't put the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost on himself. Instead, he used the soul lure technique to control the soul catcher ghost. From the restored scene, it could be clearly seen that when Xiao Yanqing and Li Daochong were fighting, a black shadow flashed past. It was between the two of them and finally entered Li Daochong's body. In fact, this was an extremely small detail. Even if an ordinary person watched the video, they wouldn't be able to see anything. However, Lan Tong and Perfected Huayang were great cultivators of yuanying. No matter how small the details were, they wouldn't be able to escape their eyes. Perfected Huayang and Lan Tong used the true eye technique together and directly invaded the spirit sequence to investigate. The investigation ended quickly. The two great cultivators looked at each other and saw a trace of anger in each other's eyes. Brother Huayang, you saw it too. Lan Tong said, I saw it. It's the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost. Perfected Hua Yang's face darkened. Oomph! How dare you bring the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost into the spiritual dream space? Are you taking the lives of more than 40,000 candidates as a joke? Lan Tong snorted coldly. The aura around him became restless and spread out. The pressure produced made more than 10 foundation establishment teachers behind him feel uneasy. However, compared to the pressure, Lan Tong's words made these senior teachers feel even more uneasy. Someone secretly brought the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost into the spiritual dream space? How audacious! How dare they disregard the Federation's cultivation method? Then the question was, who brought the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost into the spiritual dream space? It was impossible to determine from this blurry video. The black shadow seemed to have appeared of its own accord and didn't go through anyone's hands. It then invaded Li Daocheng's body and disappeared. Could it be that Li Daocheng had been controlled by the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost? But it didn't seem like it. Li Daocheng's subsequent words and actions were all normal. There was nothing wrong with them. The two great cultivators, Lan Tong and Perfected Hua Yang, were furious. They used the True Eye technique several more times to investigate. They couldn't find the source, so they investigated from the time when the 40,000 candidates entered the spiritual dream space. Still, they couldn't find any clues. The person who brought the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost and had used a secret technique and didn't leave any traces. Even the special grade spirit sequencer couldn't find any clues. Lan Tong was the head of the Fourth Ring Starfield's education department. Someone had actually dared to commit a crime right under his nose. It had even succeeded. How could Lan Tong not be angry? How could he not be angry? If he didn't find this person, where would he put his old face? The final exam had already ended. More than 40,000 candidates had already left the spiritual dream space and returned to wait for the final results to be announced. All the major media outlets were restless. They kept a close eye on the education department. Once the results were announced, they would be the first to report it. Lan Tong was scared just thinking about it. The remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost had disappeared without a trace for some unknown reason. If it had successfully taken over a candidate, this final exam would have turned into a catastrophe. It was possible that all 40,000 candidates would have their souls devoured in the spiritual dream space. If that was the case, Lan Tong would have committed a crime of neglect of duty. Going to jail was a small matter. If all the top youths of the Fourth Ring Starfield were slaughtered, the loss would be immeasurable. Brother Hua Yang, from the looks of it, Xiao Yanqing and Li Daocheng are the most suspicious. When the two of them fought, the remnant soul appeared between them. In addition, Xiao Yanzhao and Xiao Anquan were the closest. Although we can't rule out the possibility of someone controlling it from afar, the others are much less suspicious. Lan Tong's thorough investigation was fruitless. Brother Lan, before we have conclusive evidence, everyone is the same. Of course, the 4 people you mentioned do, indeed, need to be investigated. Master Hua Yang stroked his goatee. This is no small matter. If we don't investigate thoroughly, it will damage the reputation of the education department. It will also be an insult to the Federation's cultivation methods. Lan Tong said angrily. Brother Lan, these are all secondary. Think about it. If it was done by someone with ulterior motives, or even by a ghost cultivator controlled by Hades, their goal would be to kill all 40,000 candidates. That would be terrifying. Therefore, the source must be thoroughly investigated. Master Hua Yang's eyes flashed. Brother Hua Yang is right. I will report this matter to the Federation's education department and ask them to send Spiritual Talisman to Kangwu Planet. He is the only 2-star spirit sequencer in the Federation. He will definitely be able to find the culprit. Lan Tong nodded. No one knew what happened in the education department. This matter was of great importance and was not suitable to be announced to the public. Other than the 10 or so senior teachers present, no one else knew about this matter. The next day, the results were announced as usual. However, there were 4 names that did not appear in the rankings. Chapter 332. For 3 days, Li Daochong sat cross-legged on the bed in the room without moving. The spirit qi in his body washed over his body again and again. The spirit qi converted from the soul catcher's remnant soul was not only enormous, but also extremely pure. After Li Daochong digested it bit by bit, his reborn spirit body became even stronger. The spirit placenta was as stable as a rock, and the small protrusion in the center grew slightly larger. It was about the size of a thumb. The spirit root completely melted into the placenta, and he reached the middle stage of foundation establishment. He was only a hair's breadth away from the peak. If he killed another soul catcher, Li Daochong could enter the late stage of foundation establishment in one fell swoop. No one in the Federation could compare to this kind of cultivation speed. What was even more terrifying was that Li Daochong didn't need to use any resources to increase his cultivation level. The Dark Ghost was Li Daochong's resource. In the reception hall outside the hotel room, Tang Xian, Zheng Qian, Xiong Ni, Lu Huaying, and Shun Xiao were still waiting. The other teachers left one after another. Firstly, they felt that Li Daochong was putting on airs. Secondly, the competition from the Big Four was too strong. They felt that they didn't have much hope. Perhaps some schools were sincere, but they didn't have enough confidence in their school's strength. They felt that Li Daochong's performance this time meant that he wouldn't choose any school other than the Big Four, so they left. Chu Xintong left the loneliest. It wasn't worth it for such a good talent to leave just because of a few words from Su Yuan. It wasn't that Chu Xintong was impatient. She just felt that Li Daochong wouldn't choose Tai Chi Academy anymore. Everyone had self-respect. Who would go to a school that didn't respect them enough? Among the remaining five, Lu Huaying, Shun Xiaoru, and Zheng Qian were all academicians. They were outstanding leaders in their respective fields. It was hard not to attract attention when the three of them appeared in the same place at the same time. Many candidates came because of Li Daochong's reputation. In the past 3 days, the hotel had become an admissions center. The three teachers were surrounded by a group of candidates, all of them looking at them with worship in their eyes. They hoped that they could be supported by the three teachers. Instructor Zheng, what do you think of my performance in this assessment? Is it possible for me to enter St. Hua University to further my studies? A beautiful female candidate looked at Zheng Qian with a pair of big eyes. Oh, you're not bad. I've been paying attention to you, but you don't have any special skills. You're in the late stage of foundation establishment, so. You have some talent and spiritual sound, but it's still so. You still have a long way to go to meet the requirements of St. Hua University. Zheng Qian shook his head. The beautiful examinee had a lonely look on her face. Academician Shun, do I have a chance to enter Qing Su University? Among the group of examinees surrounding Shun Xiaoru, a tall male student looked at Shun Xiaoru with a pleading gaze as he asked, your results in this test were not outstanding, but you have potential. You can wait a little longer. Perhaps you will have a chance next time, Shun Xiaoru said with a serious expression. The boy's expression immediately fell. Lu Huaying, who was at the same level as Zheng Qian and Shun Xiaoru, did not have many examinees around her. The Spirit Talisman Academy was not as good as the 4 great schools. It was located in the 5-ring starfield and was relatively close to the front lines. Even among the 100 schools, it was ranked very high. However, very few people were willing to go there. Xiong and I was even less popular. The Grand Pass Combat Academy was very famous in the Federation. In some aspects, it was even better than the 4 great schools. However, no one was willing to go to this former Federation's Grand Pass. At the very least, examinees with good family backgrounds would never consider going to the Grand Pass Combat Academy. The students of the Grand Pass Combat Academy had a higher status than the students of other schools. At the same time, the Federation had a special allocation. Every student of the Grand Pass Combat Academy had twice the cultivation resources of other schools. Even so, very few people went there. No one was willing to throw their lives away. Thus, Xiong and I was the most leisurely one. No examinees would ask her any questions. In stark contrast to Xiong and I, Tang Xian was even busier than the 3 academicians. There was an endless stream of people coming to visit her. Half of the space in the reception hall was occupied, and Tang Xian was surrounded by 3 layers of people. Aside from the examinees who wanted to enter North Star University, there were also many fans and rich young masters who coveted Tang Xian. If Tang Xian hadn't brought a few bodyguards with her, as well as the deterrence of her peak foundation establishment cultivation, she would have been kidnapped long ago. Teacher Tang, I really hope to enter North Star University. This is my information and certificate. Please take a look. One examinee had been waiting in line for 2 days and 2 nights. When he finally got close to Tang Xian, he immediately handed over his resume. Her assistant, Xiao Wei, took a look and shook her head. Student, your resume looks good, but these certificates aren't very convincing. You should wait until your ranking in the final exam is out. Tang Xian, can we take a picture together? I'm Tang Xian. A rich young master shouted from behind her. This kind of scene would happen countless times every day. The hotel lobby manager, Lin Yang, was at his wit's end. For the past 3 days, he was very busy. He had to maintain order, greet every guest, and keep an eye on security. If an ordinary person caused such a big commotion in a 4-star hotel with a military background, Lin Yang would have already driven them away. However, these big shots were all very influential. They weren't people that he, the lobby manager, could provoke. Any one of them could choke him to death. Lin Yang didn't dare to act rashly. He could only bite the bullet and work overtime. While taking care of them, he also had to apologize to the guests who couldn't get in and out. Manager, which god is staying in our hotel? He made 3 academicians and a big star wait here for 3 days and 3 nights. That's one thing, but he didn't even show his face. Isn't he a little too arrogant? A receptionist complained. Little girl, go do your thing. Be careful, trouble comes from the mouth. They're waiting for the guy who got 2nd place in this joint exam. Lin Yang glared at her. After he finished speaking, he immediately looked around to see if anyone was paying attention to them. He acted like a thief. So what if he got 2nd place? He's good, but not to this extent. The joint exam isn't held every 2 years. Besides, there are many geniuses in the Federation. Getting 2nd place in the 4th ring Starfield's joint exam can't be considered the best. The receptionist had been exhausted these past few days. She was already full of resentment. Shoo! Another receptionist hurriedly gestured for her to keep quiet. She pointed outside the door and said, Xiaoyan, don't say any more. Be careful not to let Lord Yu hear you. She's a colonel in the cultivation army. She was the one who brought that candidate here. Even if you don't want to do it, I still want to do it. The receptionist, who was called Xiaoyan, looked outside the door. She immediately shrank back and stuck out her tongue. The reason why she complained was because she didn't see Yu Yan. If she had seen her, she wouldn't have dared to say a word, no matter how resentful she was. 2 days ago, she saw a few officers in cultivation army uniforms looking for Yu Yan. In the end, they were scolded so badly that they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. 1/3 of the hotel's guests were soldiers. As a receptionist, Xiaoyan knew the ranks of the military very well. The cultivation army's status in the Federation was extraordinary. Based on Xiaoyan's experience, those officers were of high status. However, in front of Yu Yan, they were like mice in front of a cat. From this, it could be seen that Yu Yan's rank was very high. I just want that candidate to come out quickly. If this goes on, we're really going to die of exhaustion. Making so much noise every day is giving me a headache. Xiaoyan lowered her voice and complained. Don't worry, he'll be out soon. The ranking will be out this morning. Once it's out, we'll enter the actual enrollment phase. It'll be over soon. Lin Yang comforted her. I hope so. Xiaoyan was really scared. Academician Zheng, who's so arrogant to make you wait here? A parent of a candidate asked curiously. Zheng Qian glanced at the parent, but did not answer. In fact, his patience had reached its limit after 3 days of waiting. Everyone go outside. The final ranking is about to be announced. Suddenly, someone shouted. Hearing this, everyone rushed out of the hotel like a swarm of bees. The ranking would be immediately displayed on a huge screen at the top of Kangwu Mountain. The crowded hotel lobby soon became empty. Other than the three academicians, Tang Xian and Xiong Ni, everyone ran out. Some flew out, some left in flying shuttles, and some ran. In short, everyone rushed out of Kangwu Mountain, wanted to know the final ranking as soon as possible. The outside world knew nothing about the final assessment and did not know the situation. Wow, Wei Xing is first. As expected, Wei Xing is the top scorer. Who's second? Blank? Why is it blank? Strange. This has never happened before. There's actually no second place, but there's third place. It's Du Gili. The top 5 rankings were basically expected, but the names behind them were unfamiliar. Especially the 9th place, Yi Feiyue. No one had heard of this name before. At the same time, in the hotel lobby, the 3 academicians, Tang Xian and Xiong Ni, also found out the final ranking through the spiritual nexus. However, to their surprise, Li Daochong's name did not appear on the list. What's going on? Shen Xiaoru was confused. Everyone else was confused. Just as Zheng Qian was puzzled, a teacher from Shanghai University ran in from outside. He hurried to Zheng Qian and whispered something in his ear. What is this true? Zheng Qian was shocked. It's true. Li Daochong is the most suspicious, so the ranking is temporarily canceled. The teacher nodded. The ranking is canceled? Shen Xiaoru was shocked. Zheng Qian waved his hand and asked the teacher to leave. He then turned to Shen Xiaoru and said, Academician Shen, this Li Daochong is yours. I don't want him. With that, Zheng Qian left with a furious look. Not long after, Shen Xiaoru, Tang Xian, Xiong Ni, and Lu Huaying all received the news. The dark ghost's remnant soul was suspected to have appeared in the dream space of the ultimate exam, and some candidates were suspected to be ghost cultivators. Currently, the most suspicious candidates were Li Daochong, Xiao Yanzhao, Xiao Yanqing, and Xiao Anquan. Shen Xiaoru's face was ashen. He glanced at the ceiling of the hotel and snorted. What a waste of time. Let's go. Lu Huaying was relatively calm, but there was some dissatisfaction in her eyes. She also left. The 3 academicians all left, leaving only Tang Xian and Xiong Ni. They looked at each other, and Xiong Ni said, Miss Tang, are you not leaving? Tang Xian smiled indifferently. Why should I leave? Xiong Ni was confused. You still want Li Daochong after such a big thing happened? Chapter 333. Xiong and I looked at Tang Xian with surprise. She hadn't expected this superstar to be so calm. Li Daochong's ranking wasn't displayed for the time being. It was rumored that it had been canceled, but Xiong and I knew that it hadn't been canceled. The higher-ups were still investigating the reason why the remnant souls had entered the dream space. Before they came to a conclusion, the results of the 4 most suspicious candidates were temporarily hidden. Li Daochong was confirmed as one of the suspects. No matter what the final result was, Xiong and I believed that the 4 great academies wouldn't have the patience to wait for the results. The 4 great academies were arrogant and wouldn't tolerate any flaws. Xiong and I was happy that the 3 scholars left so quickly. The Grand Pass Combat Academy had never rejected anyone. Xiong and I wouldn't miss out on a talent like Li Daochong. As long as he wasn't a ghost cultivator, she could accept any result. Even if Li Daochong didn't rank, Xiong and I would still bring him into the Grand Pass Combat Academy. From Li Daochong's performance in the final exam, Xiong and I liked his fighting style. It was as if he was born for battle. The Balrog seemed to have been killed by Wei Xing in the end, but Li Daochong's contribution was much greater. If he hadn't been holding back the Balrog, Wei Xing wouldn't have had the time to use the final move. Xiong and I wasn't just a lecturer at the Grand Pass Combat Academy, but she was also a vanguard of the cultivation army. Her work was similar to Yu Yan's, but Xiong Ni's rank wasn't as high as Yu Yan's, and her cultivation wasn't as high as Yu Yan's either. Xiong and I was a late-stage Foundation establishment cultivator who specialized in close combat. Although she looked petite, she was as strong as a Tyrannosaurus Rex. The Grand Pass Combat Academy didn't nurture students, but warriors who were fearless and courageous. Every year, the Grand Pass Combat Academy would send close to 10,000 outstanding soldiers to the Federation's cultivation army. Each one of them was as strong as 3 others. Thus, the Grand Pass Combat Academy had its own unique criteria for selecting candidates. Although there were no requirements for a student's background, they didn't want just anyone. Tenacity was the most important factor for the Grand Pass Combat Academy selection. Xiong and I liked Li Daocheng's temperament. He wasn't inflexible, but he also had blood. When Xiong and I found out that Li Daocheng's results had not been announced due to an unexpected incident, she didn't have much hope at first, but now she was certain that Li Daocheng was a member of the Grand Pass Combat Academy. And she didn't seem to care about Li's. Was. Tang Xian's perseverance caused Xiong Ni's confidence to falter. Tsb being was. T, S to st. His is at T, T's up. T's. S, T T's. S. T-est. Tits 3 days. 3 hours had passed since the results were announced. Wei Ziying became the brightest star on Kangwu's star. As for Li Daocheng, no one knew. Li Daocheng didn't know about this. When he walked out of his room, Ding Fugui hurriedly ran over to inform him. Li Daocheng wasn't too surprised. When Xiao Yanqing released the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost, he knew that he couldn't hide it. If he was in a small place like Blue Bay Star, he might not have been discovered. But on Kangwu Star, it was the joint examination of the entire 4-ring star field. It was obvious that Yuanying great cultivators would pay attention to it. Li Daocheng didn't believe that he could escape the eyes of a nascent soul cultivator with just the spirit sealing formation. Otherwise, Yuanying great cultivators wouldn't be able to survive. Therefore, Li Daocheng wasn't surprised at all that he was discovered. However, Li Daocheng didn't expect that he would become a suspect. After hearing Ding Fugui's account, Li Daocheng frowned slightly. He wasn't worried about being investigated. He didn't bring the remnant soul of the soul catcher ghost into the spiritual dream space. No matter how they investigated, it would have nothing to do with him. This was no small matter. It would definitely alarm the upper echelons of the Federation. No matter how powerful the Xiao family was, they wouldn't be able to do anything. Once the investigation results came out, even if the Xiao family wasn't finished, they would at least lose a layer of skin. What worried Li Daocheng was that since they found out that a remnant soul had entered, where did it go? This involved Li Daocheng's secret. How could he explain the disappearance of the remnant soul? Li Daocheng couldn't think of a reason. He also didn't know if Yuanying great cultivators would notice the hot-blooded upgrade device in his body. Brotherly, your freedom has been restricted. You can't leave Kangwu Star without permission, Ding Fugui said with a bit of unease on his fat face. Ding Fugui's heart was uneasy. At this moment, the way he looked at Li Daocheng was different. Ghost cultivators were no small matter. They were a taboo in the Federation. Once discovered, they would be killed without mercy. Ding Fugui's cultivation was low. How could he tell whether Li Daocheng was a ghost cultivator or not? If he was, then his future would be over. Ever since the test, Ding Fugui had decided that Li Daocheng would be his benefactor in the future. If this benefactor was a ghost cultivator, then Ding Fugui's investment this time would be for naught. Got it, Li Daocheng replied and walked towards the hall. He was going to return to Blue Bay Star after the test. 7 days ago, Li Daocheng promised Silver Bottle. However, plans could not be changed. After coming out of the soul dream space, Li Daocheng's body was in a bad state, and he couldn't walk at all. Therefore, Li Daocheng sent a message to Silver Bottle to ask about his father's condition. Silver Bottle's reply was, Master failed to break through, but he didn't come out of the cultivation room. The specific situation is unknown. Although Li Daocheng was worried, he didn't have the energy to spare. However, it was only a failure. There shouldn't be any danger to his life. Li Daocheng could only tell Silver Bottle that he would only be able to return in a few days. Silver Bottle told Li Daocheng not to worry. She would always guard outside the cultivation room and inform Li Daocheng immediately if anything happened. Li Daocheng was naturally assured with this girl taking care of things. 3 days had passed without any news. Now that his freedom was restricted, Li Daochong was not in a hurry. Brotherly, the hotel lobby has been very lively these past few days. If you don't come out, those teachers won't leave. Although Ding Fuguei couldn't make up his mind, he still trusted Li Daochong more. At this moment, he eagerly followed behind Li Daochong. "Oh, is that so? They should have left by now, right?" Li Daochong asked. Ding Fuguei paused and said indignantly, "That's because they have no foresight. Brotherly, they will definitely regret not recruiting you." Li Daochong looked at the little fatty and said, "What if their foresight is accurate? Maybe I really am a ghost cultivator." As Li Daochong spoke, he looked at Ding Fuguei with a glimmer in his eyes. The little fatty froze on the spot and shuddered. "Brotherly, don't scare me. I'm a coward," Ding Fuguei said with a sad face. "Ha ha!" Li Daochong laughed heartily and patted the fatty's shoulder. He asked, "Do you think Brotherly looks like a ghost cultivator?" "No." Ding Fuguei's fat head shook like a rattledrum. "Then that's it. Even if you don't believe in yourself, you have to believe in Chief Qinzhan. He talked to me face to face. If I really am a ghost cultivator, how could he not tell?" Li Daochong continued. "Slap." "That's right." Ding Fuguei slapped his forehead. His eyes lit up and the doubts in his heart immediately dissipated. "What? Look at you. Did you really believe me just now?" Li Daochong pretended to have a dark expression. No. Brotherly, I have absolute faith in you. How could you be a ghost cultivator?" Ding Fuguei hurriedly waved his hand. Seeing the fatty like this, Li Daochong couldn't keep a dark expression. He smiled and continued to ask, "Have all the admissions teachers left?" "No, there are still 2 who haven't left," Ding Fuguei replied. "Oh, those 2 schools?" Li Daochong was a little surprised. He thought they had all left. After all, being identified as a suspect was a stain. These arrogant cultivation schools couldn't tolerate sand in their eyes. North Star and Impregnable Pass. Li Daochong revealed a trace of surprise. It was reasonable for Xiong and I to still be around, but he did not expect that Tang Xian would not leave. This superstar really thought highly of him. When Li Daochong arrived at the hall, Tang Xian and Xiong and I immediately went up to him. "Student Li, I represent the Impregnable Pass Combat Academy to formally extend an invitation to you." Xiong and I extended her hand. Li Daochong shook her hand and said, "I don't even have any results right now, and you're still extending an invitation to me?" Xiong and I blinked. Our Impregnable Pass Combat Academy isn't that shallow. Results don't mean anything. I've seen your test, and your qualifications are very suitable for our academy. Tang Xian suddenly said, "Teacher Xiong, your words are too full of yourself. I feel that Student Li is most suitable for North Star University. When it comes to cultivation, which university in the Shanghua Federation can compare to North Star? Your Impregnable Pass Combat Academy only has some achievements in body refinement techniques. As far as I know, it's only average in other aspects. Teacher Xiong, please don't mislead the students." Xiong and I turned to look at Tang Xian. "Miss Tang, North Star University's cultivation department is strong, and I agree. You've seen the test as well. Student Li was born for close combat. He's only in the early stage of foundation establishment at such a young age, but he can already fight the Balrog crocodile in close combat. Based on this alone, who else would be suitable for the Impregnable Pass Combat Academy? How can you say that I mislead the students?" Tang Xian immediately said, "How can you determine whether or not a student is suitable for close combat based on a single test? North Star University's cultivation department is all-encompassing. Qi refinement, body refinement, mind refinement, and spiritual sound are all top-notch in the Federation. Even in body refinement, they aren't inferior to your Impregnable Pass Combat Academy. Student Li, if you choose us, you can slowly find a path that suits you. It's too early to make a conclusion." Li Daochong found the argument between the 2 beauties funny, but he didn't show it on his face. In reality, there wasn't much point in the 2 beauties arguing. Li Daochong cultivated both body and qi, so he didn't care about either one. As for which school he went to, it didn't matter to Li Daochong. He couldn't go to the Taiji Academy, which he wanted to go to, so it didn't matter who he chose. Although it didn't matter, Li Daocheng still wanted to go to the Impregnable Pass Combat Academy. This was because he had heard from Xiong and I that the Impregnable Pass Combat Academy was the Federation's last checkpoint 1,000 years ago. It was similar to the current Nine-Ring Star region. The school's culture was valiant, and the school's teachings advocated taking the initiative to attack instead of passively defending. Chapter 334. Li Daocheng had his eyes on the fact that the Grand Pass Combat Institute would arrange for students to train in the Hades. This was something the other academies did not do. Of all the cultivation academies in the Federation, only the Grand Pass Combat Institute had this exception. The other academies did not dare to do this. Their students were the future, so how could they send them to the front lines to die before they matured? The Grand Pass Combat Institute's philosophy was that how could one see the rainbow without experiencing the storm? Those who grew up in a greenhouse were all soft persimmons. The other academies in the Grand Pass Combat Institute had a completely different philosophy when it came to nurturing students, but it was impossible to judge who was right and who was wrong. This was mainly determined by their historical background. The Grand Pass Combat Institute had never left the front lines for 1,000 years. Because of this, the school's culture was rough and unyielding, and they had nurtured generations of battle maniacs. Almost every generation, one or two peak characters would emerge from the Grand Pass Combat Institute. The most famous of the current generation was the Berserker Sword 2 Jin. He had slaughtered his way to the peak of Jin Dan, and his battle strength was close to that of a mid-stage Yuanying. One man and one sword. He could enter and exit the Hades front lines as if there was no one there. Last year, he had single-handedly created the Ghost Dragon Pool in the Hades. He had fought the Shaman Ghost, taken its head, and exterminated more than 10 Soul Catcher ghosts before returning to the Grand Pass Combat Institute with the head of a giant demon. The giant demon was a level 13 ghost beast, and it was many times stronger than the Balrog. Tu Jin's name had shaken the Federation, and he had lived up to the name of the Grand Pass Combat Institute. Li Daocheng wanted to enter the Grand Pass Combat Institute so that it would be easier for him to enter and exit the Hades. Li Daocheng was a mid-stage Foundation establishment cultivator. As long as he did not venture too deep into the Hades, he would be able to protect himself while killing ghosts. Li Daocheng listened to the two girls' argument without saying anything. He had a faint smile on his face, but he had already made up his mind. Student Li, come to the Grand Pass Combat Institute. You definitely won't be disappointed. Xiong and I sincerely looked at Li Daocheng. Student Li, it's better if you come to North Star University. The cultivation department has 2 Yuanying professors. 1 day of cultivation in the North Star University is equivalent to 10 days in the outside world. I can guarantee you that as long as you come, North Star University will use the most abundant resources on you, Tang Xian quickly said. Li Daocheng smiled and was about to decline Tang Xian when suddenly there was a commotion outside the hall. A young man in white walked in surrounded by a group of people. The young man had a scholarly appearance. He was dressed in a white robe that emitted a faint halo and was surrounded by spiritual energy. This robe was actually an upper-grade heaven-class robe. Perhaps it was even higher than that. It was already very close to the realm of Tongxin robe. Wearing this robe, ordinary people could sit back and relax when facing malicious ghosts. Perhaps they couldn't kill the malicious ghosts, but the malicious ghosts couldn't do anything to them either. This robe alone was worth at least tens of thousands of spirit stones. The young man was followed by more than 10 bodyguards. Each of them had sharp eyes. Unexpectedly, half of them were early-stage Foundation establishment cultivators, while the other half were body-refining martial artists. The young man's cultivation was even more impressive. At this moment, he didn't hold back at all. Impressively, he was a peak Foundation establishment cultivator. With a smile on his face, the young man walked straight toward Li Daocheng and the other two. However, his gaze was fixed on Tang Xian. As for Li Daocheng and Xiong and I, it was as if they didn't exist. At this moment, several female receptionists at the front desk of the hall exclaimed, "Heavens, isn't that Shimin Hao Yin? Are my eyes playing tricks on me?" A female receptionist cried out involuntarily while holding her face. "No, no, your eyes aren't playing tricks on you. I think I saw him too." Another female receptionist stammered. "All of you stand still. Don't be love-struck. Shimin Hao Yin is not from the same world as you. Do your job properly," the lobby manager, Lin Yang, reprimanded in a low voice. "We can't even look." The two female receptionists pouted. "That's enough, you two." The receptionist, Xiaoyan, who had complained about Li Daocheng not coming down, rolled her eyes at the two of them and continued. "The Shimin family is a major shareholder of Shang Su Ling Group and a giant in the Federation. Although Shimin Hao Yin is not the successor of the Shimin family, he is still a direct descendant of the Shimin family. His status in the entire Federation can be rank high. He's in the sky, but you're not even on the ground. What do you think?" The two female receptionists knew that Xiaoyan was telling the truth, but they were still somewhat unconvinced. After all, they were pretty. Otherwise, how could they be female receptionists in a 4-star hotel? Even if Shimin Hao Yin didn't like them, it would be fine if he could have a one-night stand or something. "If we're not on the ground, where are we?" one of the female receptionists asked. "In the cellar." Before Xiaoyan could speak, Lin Yang mercilessly answered. "Wake up," Xiaoyan said. The two female receptionists made faces and acted as if they hadn't heard the words just now. They turned around and began to be infatuated again. The conversation at the front desk was very quiet, and several people deliberately tried to cover it up. The lobby manager, Lin Yang, carefully supported a layer of sound barrier so that it wouldn't affect the others and wouldn't be able to hear it. However, Li Daocheng's psychokinesis was very strong. After advancing to the middle stage of Foundation establishment, his psychokinesis would naturally be strengthened as well. How could this small sound barrier stop him? Li Daocheng heard the conversation of these people without missing a word. He was wondering who the young man in white was, but when he heard it, he understood. This scene was so flashy. Even if he didn't hear these conversations, he could see that the young man was not a small figure. Compared to the rich young masters on Blue Bay Star and Red Sun Star, he was obviously much more powerful. "Tang Xian, what a coincidence. Are you also staying in this hotel?" Shimin Hao Yin walked closer and greeted Tang Xian cordially. The fact that the young man called Tang Xian Tang was enough to show that he and Tang Xian had known each other for a long time. The relationship between the two was probably not ordinary. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to call her so intimately. Tang Xian's beautiful eyebrows showed a bit of annoyance, but it was not obvious. She replied indifferently. "No," Shimin Hao Yin said in surprise. Tang, what's so special about this hotel that a big star like you would come here? Why don't you check in?" Tang Xian obviously didn't want to bother with Shimin Hao Yin. "I have something important to do. Go do your thing." Her words were obvious enough. In other words, she was busy and had no time to bother with him. Go do what you need to do. As long as one wasn't stupid, one could understand what she meant. However, Shimin Hao Yin had no intention of leaving. Instead, he said, Tang, we haven't seen each other for a while. Recently, a Shangqingtian hot pot restaurant opened. The food is very good. Let's have dinner together tonight." Tang Xian pursed her lips. She wanted to refuse, but a movie she was going to star in a month's time started shooting. The investor of this movie was a subsidiary of Shang Su Ling Group. It was not right to not give face to Shimin Hao Yin, but Tang Xian didn't want to have dinner with him. This guy was a famous sex fiend. Many of her sisters in the circle had been killed and defiled by him, but they didn't dare to say anything. The Shimin family was too powerful. They had connections with the Central Star area. The Shimin family also had a great cultivator like Yuanying, who dared to offend them. Tang Xian's identity and background were not ordinary. She had a wide network of connections, so she was not afraid of Shimin Hao Yin. However, if this guy was really lustful and couldn't control his lower body, he might really do something to her. It would be fine if nothing happened. Tang Xian could even hit Shimin Hao Yin. However, it was easy to block an open spear, but difficult to guard against a hidden arrow. If this guy used some despicable means to deal with her, It would be difficult for Tang Xian to do anything to Shimin Haoyan. At most, she would take him to court. This guy would be arrested and locked up for a year. Tang Xian's loss would be great. It would be enough to ruin her reputation. Therefore, every time she saw Shimin Haoyan, Tang Xian would avoid him as much as possible and try not to have a conflict with him. Tang Xian was about to refuse politely when Li Daochong, who was standing on the side, said to Tang Xian, "Teacher Xiong, let's talk over there." Li Daochong said and turned to leave. He walked with Xiong and I to the sofa on the west side of the hall. Tang Xian was anxious when she saw this. Shimin Haoyan didn't come earlier or later. He just had to appear at this critical moment. At this time, she was only focused on answering Shimin Haoyan's question and ignored Li Daochong. Anyone who encountered such a situation would automatically avoid it. In a hurry, Tang Xian didn't have time to think. She blurted out, "Li Daochong, wait a minute." Li Daochong turned his face strangely and asked, "What?" Tang Xian just wanted to keep Li Daochong. She couldn't let him talk to Xiong and I alone. If they talked, she was afraid that she wouldn't have a chance. So she immediately said, "I'll treat you to a meal." Li Daochong was stunned for a moment. For a moment, he didn't realize what was going on. Why did she suddenly want to treat him to a meal? Tang Xian said, "It's late now. It's already past 12 o'clock. You and Teacher Xiong must be hungry. Why don't we talk while we eat?" Li Daochong and Xiong and I looked at each other, then turned to Tang Xian at the same time and said in unison, "Okay." Tang Xian secretly sighed in relief. However, there were strange looks coming from all around. Whether it was the scattered guests, the receptionists at the front desk, or the lobby manager, Lin Yang, they were all stunned. Each and every one of them stared at Li Daochong with their mouths agape. A big question mark appeared in their hearts. Who was this young man? How could he make the superstar Tang Xian take the initiative to treat him to a meal? No one noticed the two guys in trench coats and hats on the west side of the sofa. Their ears were almost as sharp as a rabbit's ears. These two were reporters. To be precise, they were paparazzi. While everyone was shocked, a gloomy look flashed across Shimin Haoyan's face. It was fleeting, but the smile was still on his face. Only then did he notice the young man who was standing in front of him just now. Before Tang Xian called Li Daochong, Shimin Haoyan really didn't see him. He had a natural neglect system, so he never paid attention to irrelevant people. However, Shimin Haoyan didn't expect this Tom, Dick, or Harry to be different. He knew Tang Xian's personality too well. She was famous in the circle for being a prideful woman with few desires. So far, no one had caught the goddess eye. Taking the initiative to treat a young man to a meal? That's impossible. She actually invited a young boy to a meal in public? Did the sun rise from the west? Or did Kangwoo Mountain turn upside down? Shimin Haoyan narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at Li Daochong. He stepped forward and said, "This friend looks very unfamiliar. May I know which family's descendant is invited to a meal by our superstar Tang Xian?" Li Daochong glanced at Shimin Haoyan and chuckled. "I'm just a passerby." Shimin Haoyan was stunned and didn't understand. Uffed. Tang Xian couldn't help but laugh. Her beautiful eyes looked at Li Daochong as if to say, "Student Li Daochong, you're being naughty." Li Daochong rubbed his stomach and said to Tang Xian, "Miss Tang, it's fine if you don't mention it. Now that you mention it, my stomach is growling." Chapter 335. Shimin Haoyan was used to being the center of attention. Now that he was ignored, his face darkened. How could the narrow-minded Shimin Haoyan stand it when any Tom, Dick, or Harry could steal his limelight? However, with so many people present, Shimin Haoyan naturally wouldn't get angry. His eyes flashed gloomily. "Tang Xian, I haven't had lunch yet. Let's eat together. It's my treat." Shimin Haoyan followed Tang Xian and said straightforwardly, "Another day. It's not convenient for you. We have something to talk about." Tang Xian replied with a smile. Shimin Haoyan stood still and stared blankly at Tang Xian, Li Daochong, and Xiong and I walking out of the hotel. "Young master, do you want to send someone to follow them?" A loyal lackey behind Shimin Haoyan whispered. "No need. Let's go." Shimin Haoyin raised his hand to stop him. After that, he turned around and entered the hotel. Tang Xian took Li Daochong and Xiong and I to a nearby winery. They ordered a lot of high-quality spirit beast meat and several bottles of high-quality spirit wine. This winery didn't look special on the surface, but the interior decoration was antique and had a unique flavor. The dishes were excellent, and the taste was even better. The average price of the dishes was thousands of yuan. The worst ingredient was an earth dragon's thigh. The earth dragon was a 9th-level spirit beast. Its meat was delicious, delicate, and smooth. Long-term consumption had an incubating effect on the body and naturally had a strengthening effect. If one ate it every day, in less than 5 years, their skin would become jade and their muscle strength would soar. However, ordinary people couldn't afford such high-end ingredients. It was good enough to eat it once in a while. Tang Xian ordered a lot of dishes. There were more than a dozen dishes, all of which were the specialties of this winery. Since someone was treating, Li Daochong naturally didn't refuse. He quickly ate all the dishes on the table. Tang Xian and Xiong and I only ate a few mouthfuls. Li Daochong hadn't eaten so happily for a long time. When he was in the qi refining stage, he often ate, but after entering the qi gathering stage, the spiritual energy in his body increased. He only needed to absorb spiritual energy to get enough energy. Food was just another kind of supplement. After entering the foundation building realm, one could abstain from eating for a certain period of time. It didn't matter if one didn't eat or drink, as long as there was spiritual aura. During this period of time, Li Daochong barely ate anything. Of course, even if he didn't eat, he wouldn't feel any discomfort. Eating was no longer a necessity for cultivators. Eating ordinary food was meaningless. Only spirit beasts, spirit herbs, spirit flowers, spirit fruits, and spirit wine were effective. After reaching the foundation establishment stage, eating was also a kind of cultivation. If it didn't have any effect on cultivation, eating or not wasn't that important. Tang Xian did not expect Li Daochong to have such a big appetite. She immediately ordered more dishes. Looking at how much Tang Xian had spent, Xiong and I touched her purse. She couldn't afford such a big meal. During the meal, the three of them had a tacit understanding not to bring up the issue of school selection. After eating and drinking to her heart's content, Tang Xian finally cut to the chase. "Mr. Li, which school do you intend to enroll in?" When Xiong and I heard this, her ears immediately perked up. She was a little nervous. As the saying goes, the hand that takes a gift is the shortest. Li Daochong didn't feel embarrassed about this big meal. He ate to his heart's content. Xiong and I felt that the chances of Li Daochong choosing the Xiong Pass Combat Academy were decreasing. Li Daochong burped and looked at Tang Xian with a smile. "Miss Tang, thank you for your hospitality. I haven't eaten to my heart's content in a long time. I know that you really want me to enroll in North Star University. I'm flattered that a big star like you would condescend to invite me. I'm also very grateful for your patience, but I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. However, if you need any help in the future, don't hesitate to ask. As long as it's something that I, Li Daochong, can do, I'll definitely do my best." When Xiong and I, who had already given up hope, heard Li Daochong's words, her eyes lit up. Tang Xian's expression was the complete opposite. Disappointment was written all over her face, but she didn't give up. "Mr. Li, your results haven't been announced yet. Don't be in a hurry to make a choice. Why don't you wait a little longer? It won't be too late to make a decision after the results are out." Tang Xian knew that there was no point in saying anything more. She could only stall for time. There's no need to wait any longer. Your and Teacher Xiong's sincerity is enough to move me. However, I want to go to a place that's closer to the front lines, so Li Daochong had already made up his mind. Thus, he directly spoke. However, before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by a sudden commotion. Several cultivators wearing the Security Bureau's special robes walked into the private room with solemn expressions. Due to Tang Xian's special status, it wasn't suitable for her to eat in a crowded place. Thus, the three of them ate in the private room of the winery. As soon as the Security Bureau's cultivator special police entered, A middle-aged man in the lead glanced at the three of them. Then his gaze stopped on Li Daochong, and he said, "You're Li Daochong?" Li Daochong felt a little strange. However, his face was as calm as an ancient well. He nodded and said, "Yes, I'm Li Daochong. I'm Huang Zaiqian, the captain of the Security Bureau's investigation team in Sanyan City on Kangwu Planet. There are some matters that require you to come with us to the Security Bureau. Please cooperate with the investigation." As Huang Zaiqian spoke, he took out the Security Bureau's police badge and showed it to Li Daochong. Tang Xian and Xiong Ni's expressions froze. They looked at each other and saw a trace of shock in each other's eyes. The Security Bureau had found Li Daochong at this time. Could it be that the results of the investigation were out? Li Daochong was the one who brought the dark ghost's remnant soul into the soul dream space. Li Daochong was silent for a moment. Then he stood up and said, "Let's go." Under the gazes of the two women, Li Daochong followed the Security Bureau's special police out of the private room. The corner of Xiong Ni's eyes twitched. "Miss Tang, Li Daochong can't really be the culprit who brought the dark ghost's remnant soul in, right?" Tang Xian pursed her lips and shook her head firmly. "No, Xiong and I also hoped that this wasn't the case. However, the fact that the Security Bureau's investigation team captain had personally come to invite Li Daochong showed that the higher-ups attached great importance to this matter. The Security Bureau's investigation team captain had a higher rank than the mayor of Sanyan City. Furthermore, he had special privileges. It was impossible for someone below the Jean Dan stage to be qualified for this position. Dispatching such a person to bring along a suspect wasn't as simple as attaching great importance to this matter. It also meant that the target's strength was relatively high and was considered a dangerous person. Otherwise, why would they send out a Jean Dan stage captain? It was completely unnecessary. Xiong Ni's gaze wavered. She couldn't make up her mind. If Li Daochong really did bring a remnant soul into the soul dream space, then he was undoubtedly a ghost cultivator. The Great Past Combat Academy definitely wouldn't accept a traitor who had lost his conscience and become a ghost instead of human. Tang Xian's thoughts were different from Xiong Ni's. She didn't believe that Li Daochong would do such a thing. Li Tianyang's son definitely couldn't be a ghost cultivator. Li Tianyang was the Tang family's benefactor. Tang Xian had interacted with Li Tianyang several times. Her father and Li Tianyang were friends who had gone through life and death together. How could the son of such a righteous person be a ghost cultivator? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Tang Xian immediately stood up and left the private room without saying goodbye to Xiong and I. Two bodyguards and her assistant, Xiao Wei, immediately went to greet her. When the Security Bureau's people had entered, they didn't dare to stop them. "Miss, why did the Security Bureau's people take Li Daochong away? Could it be?" Xiao Wei hesitated. "Don't guess. Let's go and have a look. Oh, by the way, contact lawyer Yin immediately and tell him to go directly to the Security Bureau." Tang Xian hurried out of the winery. The Security Bureau's flying shuttles were all custom-made by the Federation. They had very high specifications and were twice as fast as ordinary civilian flying shuttles. 20 minutes later, Li Daochong was brought into the Security Bureau's building in the center of Sanyan City. After entering, Huang Zaiqian didn't ask Li Daochong any questions. He directly ordered people to put Li Daochong in a temporary cell. Li Daochong frowned. "Captain Huang, you have to have a reason to lock me up. What did I do?" Huang Zaiqian's attitude was much colder than before. He glanced at Li Daochong. "Do you still need to ask what you did? The orders from above are to arrest you directly. We'll make a decision after the results of the investigation are out. You'd better do well." Li Daochong was a little annoyed. "What do you mean by what I did? Please say it clearly. Otherwise, why would you lock me up?" Huang Zaiqian didn't listen to Li Daochong at all. He turned around and left. Two special police officers came up and pushed Li Daochong to the other side. The spirit energy in Li Daochong's body surged. He almost made a move, but in the end, he restrained himself. This was the Security Bureau. Perhaps Li Daochong already had a certain level of strength. At least, It was impossible for these two special police officers who were only in the early stage of Foundation establishment to hold him down. Li Daocheng used his telekinesis to spread out. He knew the auras in the security bureau like the back of his hand. Other than Huang Zaiyin, there were two other powerful auras. They were all in the middle stage of Jindan. There were also 5 Peak Foundation establishment cultivators. Other than that, there were hundreds of other auras. This was the headquarters of Kangwu Planet's Security Bureau. Naturally, there were many people here. It would be very difficult for Li Daocheng to escape. Chapter 336. The temporary cell was located on the first floor of the building. The entire first floor was filled with cells for various purposes and was wrapped in a spiritual array. Nominally, this place was not a prison, but a temporary detention center within the Security Bureau. Its main purpose was to temporarily control suspects and some criminals who had committed crimes and needed to be detained for a period of time. Li Daocheng was brought into a large room inside. As he walked through the corridor, Li Daocheng saw the 3 members of the Xiao family. Xiao Yanqing, Xiao Yanzhao, and Xiao Anchuan were locked in separate rooms. When the 3 of them saw Li Daocheng, they all looked at him with a playful gaze. Seeing that the 3 members of the Xiao family were also locked up, the anger in Li Daocheng's heart subsided a lot. It seemed that they were not targeting him. The difference was that the 3 guys were locked in separate rooms, while Li Daocheng was brought into a large room by 2 special police officers. There were already more than 10 criminals inside, all of whom looked fierce and ferocious, looking like they were not to be trifled with. After the 2 special police officers pushed Li Daocheng in, they left, but before leaving, they glanced at Li Daocheng with bad intentions. It was as if they were saying, "Boy, good luck." Li Daocheng's expression changed slightly, but he was on guard in his heart. He glanced at the more than 10 criminals in the large room. 3 of them were actually at the early stage of Foundation establishment. At this time, they also looked at Li Daocheng with a bit of bad intentions in their eyes. Li Daocheng's face was expressionless as he casually leaned against the silver railing and closed his eyes to rest. Li Daocheng was not resting, but concentrating his spirit to explore with his mind power. Now, the strength of Li Daocheng's mind power was not inferior to that of a Jindan cultivator. It was close to the strength of a late-stage Jindan cultivator's mind power. In terms of cohesiveness and thickness, Li Daocheng's mind power was even stronger than that of a late-stage Jindan cultivator's. The blood-boiling level-up tool came with its own spiritual cultivation technique, psychokinesis battle technique. As long as Li Daocheng's cultivation increased, his psychokinesis would increase as well. Of course, it wasn't that he didn't need to cultivate. Ever since Li Daocheng started cultivating, he had never stopped. He would cultivate whenever he had time. Every night, Li Daocheng would meditate to strengthen his divine telekinesis. Therefore, his greatest trump card was not his combat strength, but his unfathomable telekinesis. Even though the security of the Kangwu Star's General Security Bureau was extremely tight and was reinforced by many spirit arrays, it was extremely private and safe. But even so, it couldn't stop Li Daocheng's psychic power that was condensed into a line and spread out. The cultivation of the prisoners who were brought here would not exceed the middle stage of Jindan. Any higher, and they would not be locked up here but somewhere else. Li Daocheng quickly found Huang Zaiyin in an office on the 3rd floor of the building. This office was wrapped in an invisible barrier, separating the inside from the outside world. This invisible barrier was of a very high level and seemed to be formed after some kind of spirit array was activated. It had a strong soundproof effect. Even if a Foundation establishment cultivator were to fight inside, as long as they did not break through the barrier, the outside world would not know. However, this powerful barrier was not an obstacle for Li Daocheng. He gathered his psychic power slightly and easily penetrated it, silently probing inside. Psychokinesis was a kind of spiritual energy field. As long as it was strong enough, it could break through any kind of barrier. The moment Li Daocheng's psychic power entered, his heart skipped a beat. Other than Huang Zaiyin, There were two other people in the office. Li Daochong was very familiar with one of them. It was the Xiao family's grand elder, Xiao Chongquan. As expected, it was this old thing. Li Daochong's heart burned with anger, but he quickly calmed down and focused on listening. Captain Huang, this old man does not know what to say. You are willing to take such a big risk to help the Xiao family. This kindness will be engraved in the hearts of the Xiao family. Xiao Chanchuan's voice trembled. His gratitude to Huang Zaiyan was self-evident. Xiao Chongquan had allowed Xiao Yanqing to bring the Soul Snatcher ghost's remnant soul into the soul dream space and used a secret technique. Xiao Chongquan thought that nothing would go wrong. Moreover, that remnant soul no longer had any soul consciousness and had been refined a few years ago. Even if it possessed Li Daochong's body, there would not be any major problems because this nether soul had already been controlled by the Xiao family. Xiao Chongquan thought that Li Daochong would die without a doubt, but who would have thought that after the remnant soul entered Li Daochong's body, it would be struck by lightning? The Xiao family and the remnant soul were connected by the soul refining tablet. When the remnant soul died, the soul refining tablet exploded with lightning. Xiao Chongquan already knew that Li Daochong had a lightning technique, but he did not expect it to be so strong that it could even destroy the Soul Snatcher ghost's remnant soul. Xiao Chongquan was naturally heartbroken that he had not been able to kill Li Daochong and had even lost his remnant soul for nothing. However, this was nothing. At worst, he would have to think of another way to deal with Li Daochong. However, the matter of the remnant soul appearing in the soul dream space had been exposed. This left Xiao Chongquan at a loss. The Xiao family was well informed and quickly found out that it had been discovered by Lan Tong and Master Huaiyang, the two Yuanian grand cultivators. Xiao Chongquan knew that this matter would not end well and would definitely investigate thoroughly. This investigation would eventually lead to the Xiao family. No matter how strong the Xiao family was, they could not bear the wrath of a grand cultivator like Yuanian. Xiao Chongquan urgently gathered the core members to discuss countermeasures. After several arguments, Xiao Hongming finally invited Huang Zaiqian, the captain of the security bureau. Huang Zaiqian's weakness was in Xiao Hongming's hands. This captain of the security bureau's investigation team had taken millions of spirit stones and bribes. He was the black sheep of the security bureau. However, Huang Zaiqian was cautious in his actions. Accepting bribes was one thing, but he would never do something he was not confident in. When it came to major matters, he would not accept it no matter how much money was offered. He would only accept small matters that he could easily erase with his authority. Unfortunately, Huang Zaiqian had a slip of the tongue when he was drinking with Xiao Hongming. Xiao Hongming had always been treacherous and had recorded all of Huang Zaiqian's words. As a result, Huang Zaiqian had unknowingly become a chess piece that the Xiao family could use at any time. At that time, Xiao Hongming had only thought that since Huang Zaiqian was in a privileged position, he might be able to use him in the future. He never thought that he would be used so quickly. In fact, the timid Huang Zaiqian would not dare to accept such a major matter. However, Xiao Hongming held his lifeline, so he had no choice but to do it. Elder Xiao, this Huang and Hongming are friends who have gone through life and death together. If the Xiao family has a problem, this Huang will not shirk. However, this Huang still wants to ask, "Are you sure this will work? Will something go wrong?" Huang Zaiqian asked worriedly. "Brother Huang, you can rest assured that nothing will go wrong. Even if something does go wrong, it has nothing to do with you." Arresting Li Daochong was an order from above, and those three useless things from the Xiao family were also summoned. You're just doing your job impartially. As for what happened in the prison, you don't know, so the higher-ups will not suspect you. Xiao Hongming patted his chest. Huang Zaiqian nodded, but his expression was still a little unfocused. After a pause, he said, "Brother Xiao, this is no small matter. Using the soul sacrifice body tempering technique is forbidden in the Federation." Xiao Chongquan sighed. "Captain Huang, there is no other way. If we want the higher-ups to confirm that Li Daochong was the one who did it, we can only turn this kid into a ghost cultivator. Otherwise, the Xiao family will definitely be the target." Huang Zaiqian sighed and said to Xiao Hongming, "Brother Xiao, you promised me that you would destroy the recording after the matter is done. I wonder if you can now." Xiao Hongming patted Huang Zaiqian's shoulder and said, "Brother Huang, don't worry. Wait a little longer. When my 3 men of sacrifice invade Li Daocheng's body with the 3 dead souls and refine that kid into a ghost body, I will immediately destroy the recording." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.